Chapter 1. The fanatic, Mr. Carroll, lately from Rome, stood by the window, looking out over the rain-swept, steaming quays to Notre Dame on the island yonder. Overhead rolled and crackled the artillery of an April thunderstorm, and Mr. Carroll, looking out upon Paris in a shroud of rain, under a pall of thundercloud, felt himself at harmony with nature. Over his heart, too, the gloom of storm was lowering. Just as in his heart, it was still little more than April time. Behind him, in that chamber furnished in dark oak and leather of a reign or two ago, sat Sir Richard Everard at a vast writing table all a-litter with books and papers. And Sir Richard watched his adoptive son with fierce, melancholy eyes, watched him until he grew impatient of this pause. "Well," demanded the old baronet harshly, "will you undertake it, Justin, now that the chance has come?" And he added, "You'll never hesitate if you are the man I have sought to make you." Mr. Carroll turned slowly. "It is because I am the man that God and you, have made me that I do hesitate." His voice was quiet and pleasantly modulated, and he spoke English with the faintest slur, perceptible, perhaps, only to the keenest ear of a French accent. To ears less keen, it would merely seem that he articulated with precision so singular as to verge on pedantry. The light falling full upon his profile revealed the rather singular countenance that was his own. It was not in any remarkable beauty that its distinction lay, for by the canons of beauty that prevail it was not beautiful. The features were irregular and inclined to harshness. The nose was too abruptly arched, the chin too long and square, the complexion too pallid. Yet a certain dignity haunted that youthful face, of such a quality as to stamp it upon the memory of the merest passer-by. The mouth was difficult to read and full of contradictions. The lips were full and red, and you would declare them the lips of sensualist but for the line of stern, almost grim, determination in which they met. And yet, somewhere behind that grimness, there appeared to lurk a haunting whimsicality. A smile seemed ever to impend, but whether sweet or bitter none could have told until it broke. The eyes were as remarkable, wide-set and slow-moving, as becomes the eyes of an observant man. They were of an almost greenish color, and so level in their ordinary glance as to seem imbued with an uncanny penetration. His hair, he dared to wear his own and clubbed it in a broad ribbon of watered silk, was almost of the hue of bronze, with here and there a glint of gold, and as luxuriant as any wig. For the rest, he was scarcely above the middle height, of an almost frail but very graceful slenderness, and very graceful, too, in all his movements. In dress, he was supremely elegant, with the elegance of France, that in England would be accounted foppishness. He wore a suit of dark blue cloth, with white satin linings that were revealed when he moved. It was heavily laced with gold, and a ramiform pattern embroidered in gold thread ran up the sides of his silk stockings of a paler blue. Jewels gleamed in the Brussels at his throat, and there were diamond buckles on his lacquered, red-heeled shoes. Sir Richard considered him with anxiety and some chagrin. "Justin," he cried, a world of reproach in his voice. "What can you need to ponder?" "Whatever it may be," said Mr. Carroll, "it will be better that I ponder it now than after I have pledged myself." "But what is it?" "What?" demanded the baronet. "I am marveling, for one thing, that you should have waited 30 years. Sir Richard's fingers stirred the papers before him in an idle, absent manner. Into his brooding eyes there leapt a glitter to be seen in the eyes of the fevered of body or mind. "Vengeance," said he slowly, "is a dish best relished when 'tis eaten cold." He paused an instant, then continued, "I might have crossed to England at the time and slain him. Should that have satisfied me? What is death but peace and rest?" "There is a hell, we are told," Mr. Carroll reminded him. "Aye," was the answer, "we are told. But I dursn't risk its being false where Ostamore is concerned. So I preferred to wait until I could brew him such a cup of bitterness as no man ever drank ere he was glad to die." In a quieter, retrospective voice, he continued, "Had we prevailed in the 15, I might have found a way to punish him that had been worthy of the crime that calls for it. We did not prevail. Moreover, I was taken and transported. What think you, Justin? Gave me courage to endure the rigors of the plantations, cunning and energy to escape after 5 such years of it as had assuredly killed a stronger man less strong of purpose. What but the task that was awaiting me? It imported that I should live and be free to call a reckoning in full with my Lord Ostamore before I go to my own account. Opportunity has gone lame upon this journey, but has arrived at last. Unless he paused, his voice sank from the high note of exaltation to which it had soared. It became charged with dread, as did the fierce eyes with which he raked his companion's face. Unless you prove false to the duty that awaits you, and that I'll not believe, you are your mother's son, Justin. And my father's, too, answered Justin in a thick voice. And the Earl of Ostermore is that same father. The more sweetly shall your mother be avenged, cried the other, and again his eyes blazed with that unhealthy, fanatical light. What fitter than the hand of that poor lady's son to pull your father down in ruins? He laughed short and fiercely. It seldom chances in this world that justice is done so nicely. You hate him very deeply, said Mr. Carroll pensively, and the look in his eyes betrayed the trend of his thoughts. They were pity, but pity at the futility of such strong emotions. As deeply as I loved your mother, Justin. The sharp, rugged features of that seared old face seemed of a sudden transfigured and softened. The wild eyes lost some of their glitter in a look of wistfulness, as he pondered a moment the one sweet memory in a wasted life, a life wrecked over 30 years ago, wrecked wantonly by that same Ostermore of whom they spoke, who had been his friend. A groan broke from his lips. He took his head in his hands, and, elbows on the table, he sat very still a moment, reviewing as in a flash the events of 30 and more years ago, when he and Viscount Rotherby, as Ostermore was then, had been young men at the St. Germain's court of James II. It was on an excursion into Normandy that they had met Mademoiselle de Maligny, the daughter of an impoverished gentleman of the chétive noblesse of that province. Both had loved her. She had preferred, as women will, the outward handsomeness of Viscount Rotherby to the sounder heart and brain that were Dick Everard's. As bold and dominant as any ruffle of them all where men and perils are concerned, young Everard was timid, bashful, and without assertiveness with women. He had withdrawn from the contest ere it was well lost, leaving an easy victory to his friend. And how had that friend used it? Most foully, as you shall learn. Leaving Rotherby in Normandy, Everard had returned to Paris. The affairs of his king gave him cause to cross at once to Ireland. For 3 years he abode there, working secretly in his master's interest, to little purpose be it confessed. At the end of that time, he returned to Paris. Rotherby was gone. It appeared that his father, Lord Ostermore, had prevailed upon Bentinck to use his influence with William on the errant youth's behalf. Rotherby had been pardoned his loyalty to the fallen dynasty. A deserter in every sense, he had abandoned the fortunes of King James, which in Everard's eyes was bad enough, and he had abandoned the sweet lady he had fetched out of Normandy 6 months before his going, of whom it seemed that in his lordly way he was grown tired. From the beginning it would appear they were ill-matched. It was her beauty had made appeal to him. Even as his beauty had enamored her, elementals had brought about their union, and when these elementals shrank with habit, as elementals will, they found themselves without a tie of sympathy or common interest to link them each to the other. She was by nature blithe, a thing of sunshine, flowers, and music, who craved a very poet for her lover, and by a poet, I mean not your mere rhymer. He was downright stolid and stupid under his fine exterior, the worst type of Briton, without the saving grace of a Briton's honor. And so she had wearied him, who saw in her no more than a sweet loveliness that had cloyed him presently. And when the chance was offered him by Bentinck and his father, he took it and went his ways, and this sweet flower that he had plucked from his Normandy garden to adorn him for a brief summer's day was left a wilt, discarded. The tale that greeted Everard on his return from Ireland was that, broken-hearted, she had died, crushed neath her load of shame, for it was said that there had been no marriage. The rumor of her death had gone abroad, and it had been carried to England to my Lord Rotherby by a cousin of hers, the last living Maligny, who crossed the channel to demand of that stolid gentleman's satisfaction for the dishonor put upon his house. All the satisfaction the poor fellow got was a foot or so of steel through the lungs, of which he died, and there, may have seemed to Rotherby, the matter ended. But Everard remained, Everard, who had loved her with a great and almost sacred love, Everard, who swore black ruin for my Lord Rotherby, the rumor which may also have been carried to his lordship and stimulated his activities in having Everard hunted down after the Braemar fiasco of 1715. But before that came to pass, Everard had discovered that the rumor of her death was false, put about No doubt, out of fear of that same cousin who had made himself champion and avenger of her honor. Everard sought her out and found her perishing of want in an attic in the Court of Miracles some 4 months later, 8 months after Rotherby's desertion. In that sordid, wind-swept chamber of Paris' most abandoned haunt, a son had been born to Antoinette de Maligny 2 days before Everard had come upon her. Both were dying. Both had assuredly died within the week, but that he came so timely to her aid. And that aid he rendered like the noble-hearted gentleman he was. He had contrived to save his fortune from the wreck of James' kingship, and this was safely invested in France, in Holland, and elsewhere abroad. With a portion of it, he repurchased the chateau and estates of Maligny, which on the death of Antoinette's father had been seized upon by creditors. Thither he sent her and her child, Rotherby's child, making that noble domain a christening gift to the boy, for whom he had stood sponsor at the font. And he did his work of love in the background. He was a god in the machine, no more. No single opportunity of thanking him did he afford her. He effaced himself that she might not see the sorrow she occasioned him, lest it should increase her own. For 2 years she dwelt at Maligny in such peace as the broken-hearted may know, the little of life that was left her irradiated by Everard's noble friendship. He wrote to her from time to time, now from Italy, now from Holland, but he never came to visit her. A delicacy, which may or may not have been false, restrained him, and she, respecting what instinctively she knew to be his feelings, never bade him come to her. In their letters they never spoke of Rotherby. Not once did his name pass between them. It was as if he had never lived or never crossed their lives. Meanwhile, she weakened and faded day by day, despite all the care with which she was surrounded. That winter of cold and want in the Court of Miracles had sown its seeds, and death was sharpening his scythe against the harvest. When the end was come, she sent urgently for Everard. He came at once in answer to her summons, but he came too late. She died the evening before he arrived, but she had left a letter, written days before, against the chance of his not reaching her before the end. That letter, in her fine French hand, was before him now. "I will not try to thank you, dearest friend," she wrote, "for the thing that you have done. What payment is there in poor thanks? Oh, Everard, Everard, had it but pleased God to have helped me to a wiser choice when it was mine to choose," she cried him from that letter. And poor Everard deemed that the thin ray of joy her words sent through his anguished soul was payment more than enough for the little that he had done. "God's will be done," she continued. "It is his will. He knows why it is best so, though we discern it not. But there is the boy, there is Justin. I bequeath him to you who already have done so much for him. Love him a little for my sake. Cherish and rear him as your own, and make of him such a gentleman as are you. His father does not so much as know of his existence. That, too, is best so, for I would not have him claim my boy. Never let him learn that Justin exists, unless it be to punish him by the knowledge for his cruel desertion of me." Choking, the writing blurred by tears that he accounted no disgrace to his young manhood, Everard had sworn in that hour that Justin should be as a son to him. He would do her will, and he set upon it a more definite meaning than she intended. Rotherby should remain in ignorance of his son's existence until such season as should make the knowledge a very anguish to him. He would rear Justin in bitter hatred of the foul villain who had been his father, and with the boy's help, when the time should be ripe, he would lay my Lord Rotherby in ruins. Thus should my lord soon come to find him out. This Everard had sworn, and this he had done. He had told Justin the story almost as soon as Justin was of an age to understand it. He had repeated it at very frequent intervals, and as the lad grew, Everard watched in him, fostering it by every means in his power, the growth of his execration for the author of his days, and of his reverence for the sweet, departed saint that had been his mother. For the rest, he had lavished Justin nobly for his mother's sake. The repurchased estates of Maligny, with their handsome rent roll, remained Justin's own, administered by Sir Richard during the lad minority, and vastly enriched by the care of that administration. He had sent the lad to Oxford, and afterwards, the more thoroughly to complete his education, on a 2 years' tour of Europe, and on his return, a grown and cultured man, he had attached him to the court in Rome with Pretender, whose agent he was himself in Paris. He had done his duty by the boy as he understood his duty, always with that grim purpose of revenge for his horizon, and the result had been a stranger compound than even Everard knew, for all that he knew the lad exceedingly well. for he had scarcely reckoned sufficiently upon Justin's mixed nationality and the circumstance that in soul and mind he was entirely his mother's child, with nothing or an imperceptible little of his father. As his mother's nature had been, so was Justin's joyous. But Everard's training of him had suppressed all inborn vivacity. The mirth and diablerie that were his birthright had been overlaid with British phlegm, until in their stead, and through the blend, a certain sardonic humor had developed, an ironical attitude toward all things whether sacred or profane. This had been helped on by culture, and in a still greater measure by the odd training in worldliness which he had from Everard. His illusions were shattered ere he had cut his wisdom teeth, thanks to the tutelage of Sir Richard, who, in giving him the ugly story of his own existence, taught him the misanthropical lesson that all men are knaves, all women fools. He developed, as a consequence, that sardonic outlook upon the world. He sought to take vos non vobis for his motto, affected to a spectator in the theater of life, with the obvious result that he became the greatest actor of them all. So we find him even now, his main emotion pity for Sir Richard, who sat silent for some moments, reviewing that 30-year dead past, until the tears scalded his old eyes. The baronet made a queer noise in his throat, something between a snarl and a sob, and he flung himself suddenly back in his chair. Justin sat down, a becoming gravity in his countenance. "Tell me all," he begged his adoptive father. "Tell me how matters stand precisely, how you propose to act." "With all my heart," the baronet assented. "Lord Ostermore, having turned his coat once for profit, is ready now to turn it again for the same end. From the information that reaches me from England, it would appear that in the rage of speculation that has been toured in London, his lordship has suffered heavily. How heavily, I am not prepared to say, but heavily enough, I dare swear, to have caused his offer to return to his king. For he looks, no doubt, to sell his services at a price that will help him mend the wreckage of his fortunes. A week ago, a gentleman who goes between His Majesty's court at Rome and his friends here in Paris brought me word from His Majesty that Ostermore had signified to him his willingness to rejoin the Stuart cause. Together with that information, this messenger brought me letters from His Majesty to several of his friends, which I was to send to England by a safe hand at the first opportunity. Now, amongst these letters, delivered to me unsealed, is one to my Lord Ostermore, making him certain advantageous proposals which he is sure to accept if his circumstances be as crippled as I am given to understand. Atterbury and his friends, it seems, have already tampered with my lord's loyalty to Dutch George to some purpose, and there is little doubt but that this letter, and he tapped the document before him, will do what else is to be done. But, since these letters were left with me, come you with His Majesty's fresh injunctions that I am to suppress them and cross to England at once myself, to prevail upon Atterbury and his associates to abandon the undertaking. Mr. Carroll nodded. "Because, as I have told you," said he, "King James in Rome has received positive information that in London the plot is already suspected, little though Atterbury may dream it. But what has this to do with my Lord Ostermore?" "This," said Everard slowly, leaning across toward Justin and laying a hand upon his sleeve. "I am to counsel the bishop to stay his hand against a more favorable opportunity. There is no reason why you should not do the very opposite with Ostermore." Mr. Carroll knit his brows, his eyes intent upon the other's face, but he said no word. "It is," urged Everard, "an opportunity such as there may never be another. We destroy Ostermore. By a turn of the hand, we bring him to the gallows." He chuckled over the word, with a joy almost diabolical. "But how? How do we destroy him?" quoth Justin, who suspected yet dared not encourage his suspicions. "How? Do you ask how? Is not plain," snapped Sir Richard, and what he avoided putting into words, his eloquent glance made clear to his companion. Mr. Carroll rose of thought quickly, a faint flush stirring in his cheeks, and he threw off Everard's grasp with a gesture that was almost repugnance. "You mean that I am to enmesh him?" Sir Richard smiled grimly. "As His Majesty's accredited agent," he explained, "I will equip you with papers. Word shall go ahead of you to Ostermore by a safe hand to bid him look for the coming of a messenger bearing his own family name. No more than that. Nothing that can betray us, yet enough to whet his lordship's appetite. You shall be the ambassador to bear him the tempting offers from the king. You will obtain his answers, accepting, Those you will deliver to me, and I shall do the trifle that may still be needed to set the rope about his neck." A little while there was silence. Outside, the rain, driven by gusts, smote the window as with a scourge. The thunder was grumbling in the distance now. Mr. Carroll resumed his chair. He sat very thoughtful, but with no emotion showing his face. British stolidity was in the ascendant with him then. He felt that he had the need of it. "It is ugly," he said at last slowly. "It is God's own will," was the hot answer, and Sir Richard smote the table. "Has God taken you into his confidence?" wondered Mr. Carroll. "I know that God is justice. Yet is it not written that vengeance is his own?" "Aye, but he needs human instruments to execute it. Such instruments are we. Can you hesitate?" Mr. Carroll clenched his hand hard. "Do it," he answered through set teeth. "Do it. I shall approve it when 'tis done. But find other hands for the work. Sir Richard, he is my father." Sir Richard remained cool. "That is the argument I employ for insisting upon the task being yours," he replied. Then, in a blaze of passion, he, who had schooled his adoptive son so ably in self-control, marshaled once more his arguments. "It is your duty to your mother to forget that he is your father. Think of him only as the man who wronged your mother, the man to whom her ruined life, her early death are due, her murderer and worse. Consider that. Your father, you say." He mocked almost. "Your father? And what is he, your father? You have never seen him. He does not know that you exist, that you ever existed. Is that to be a father? Father, you say. A word, a name. No more than that. A name that gives rise to a sentiment. And a sentiment is to stand between you and your clear duty. A sentiment is to set protecting shield of a man who killed your mother. I think I shall despise you, Justin, if you fail me in this. I have lived for it," he ran on tempestuously. "I have reared you for it, and you shall not fail me." Then his voice dropped again, and in quieter tones. "You hate the very name of John Carroll, Earl of Ostermore," said he, "as must every decent man who knows the truth of what the life of that satyr holds. If I have suffered you to bear his name, it is to the end that it should remind you daily that you have no right to it, that you have no right to any name." When he said that, he thrust his finger consciously into a raw wound. He saw Justin wince, and with pitiless cunning he continued to prod that tender place until he had aggravated the smart of it into a very agony. "That is what you owe your father. That is the full extent of what lies between you, that you are of those at whom the world is given to sneer and point scorn's ready finger." "None has ever dared," said Mr. Carroll, "because none has ever known. We have kept the secret well. You display no coat of arms that no bar sinister may be displayed. But the time may come when the secret must out. You might, for instance, think of marrying a lady of quality, a lady of your own supposed station. What shall you tell her of yourself? That you have no name to offer her, that the name you bear is yours by assumption only? Ah, that brings home your own wrongs to you, Justin. Consider them. Have them ever present in your mind, together with your mother's blighted life, that you may not shrink when the hour strikes to punish the evildoer." He flung himself back in his chair again and watched the younger man with brooding eye. Mr. Carroll was plainly moved. He had paled a little, and he sat now with brows contracted and set teeth. Sir Richard pushed back his chair and rose, recapitulating. "He is your mother's destroyer," he said with a sad sternness. "Is the ruin of that fair life to go unpunished? Is it, Justin?" Mr. Carroll's Gallic spirit burst abruptly through its British glaze. He crushed fists into palm and swore. "No, by God! It shall not, Sir Richard." Sir Richard held out his hands, and there was a fierce joy in his gloomy eyes at last. "You'll cross to England with me, Justin?" But Mr. Carroll's soul fell once more into travail. "Wait," he cried. "Ah, wait." His level glance met Sir Richard's in earnestness and entreaty. "Answer me the truth upon your soul and conscience. Do you in your heart believe that it is what my mother would have had me do?" There was an instant's pause. Then Everard, the fanatic of vengeance, the man whose mind upon that one subject was become unsound with excessive brooding, answered with conviction. "As I have a soul to be saved, Justin, I do believe it. More, I know it. Here, Trembling hands took up the old letter from the table and proffered it to Justin. Here is her own message to you. Read it again. And what time the young man's eyes rested upon that fine, pointed writing, Sir Richard recited aloud the words he knew by heart, the words that had been ringing his ears since that day when he had seen her lowered to rest. Never let him learn that Justin exists unless it be to punish him by the knowledge for his cruel desertion of me. It is your mother's voice speaking to you from the grave. The fanatic pursued, and so infected Justin at last with something of a fanaticism. The green eyes flashed uncannily. The white young face grew cruelly sardonic. You believe it? He asked, and the eagerness that now invested his voice showed how it really was with him. As I have a soul to be saved, Sir Richard repeated. Then gladly will I set my hand to it. Fire stirred through Justin now, a fire of righteous passion. An idea, no more than an idea, daunted me. You have shown me that. I cross to England with you, Sir Richard, and let my Lord Ostermore look to himself. For my name, I who have no right to any name, my name is Judgment. The exaltation fell from him as suddenly as it had mounted. He dropped into a chair, thoughtful again and slightly ashamed of his sudden outburst. Sir Richard Everard watched with an eye of gloomy joy the man, whom he had been at such pains to school in self-control. Overhead there was a sudden crackle of thunder, sharp and staccato, as a peal of demoniac laughter. Chapter 2. At the Adam and Eve, Mr. Carroll alighted from his traveling chaise in the yard of the Adam and Eve at Maidstone on a sunny afternoon in May. Landed at Dover the night before, he had parted company with Sir Richard Everard that morning. His adoptive father had turned aside toward Rochester to discharge his king's business with plotting Bishop Atterbury. What time Justin was to push on toward town as King James' ambassador to the Earl of Ostermore, who, advised of his coming, was expecting him. Here at Maidstone, it was Mr. Carroll's intent to dine, resuming his journey in the cool of the evening, when he hoped to get at least as far as Farnborough ere he slept. Landlady, chamberlain, ostler, and a posse of underlings hastened to give welcome to so fine a gentleman, and a private room above stairs was placed at his disposal. Before ascending, however, Mr. Carroll sauntered into bar for a wedding glass to give him an appetite, and further for the purpose of bespeaking in detail his dinner with the hostess. It was one of his traits that he gave the greatest attention to detail, and held that the man who left the ordering of his edibles to his servants was no better than an animal who saw no more than nourishment in food. Nor was the matter one to be settled summarily. It asked thought and time. So he sipped his hock, listening to the landlady's proposals, and amending them where necessary with suggestions of his own. And what time he was so engaged, there ambled into the inn-yard a sturdy cob, bearing a sturdy little man in snuff-colored clothes that had seen somewhere. The newcomer threw his reins to the stable boy, a person of all the importance necessary to receive so indifferent a guest. He got down nimbly from his horse, produced an enormous handkerchief of many colors, and removed his three-cornered hat that he might the better mop his brow and youthful, almost cherubic face. What time he did so, a pair of bright little blue eyes were very busy with Mr. Carroll's carriage, from which Leduc, Mr. Carroll's valet, was in the act of removing a portmanteau. His mobile mouth fell into lines of satisfaction. Still mopping himself, he entered the inn and, guided by the drone of voices, sauntered into the bar. At sight of Mr. Carroll leaning there, his little eyes beamed an instant, as do the eyes of one who espies a friend, or, apter figure, the eyes of the hunter when they sight the quarry. He advanced to the bar, bowing to Mr. Carroll with an air almost apologetic, and to the landlady with an air scarcely less so, as he asked for a nipperkin of ale to wash the dust of the road from his throat. The hostess called a drawer to serve him, and departed herself upon the momentous business of Mr. Carroll's dinner. "A warm day, sir," said the chubby man. Mr. Carroll agreed with him politely, and finished his glass, the other sipping meanwhile at his ale. "A fine brew, sir," said he. "A prodigious fine brew. With all respect, sir, your honor should try a wet of our English ale." Mr. Carroll, setting down his glass, looked languidly at the man. "Why do you exclude me, sir, from the nation of this beverage?" he inquired. "It is an honor, sir, that you should have thought me anything." The other abased himself. "'Twas an unwarrantable presumption. Codso, which I hope your honor will pardon." Then he smiled again, his little eyes twinkling humorously. "And ye would try the ale. I dare swear your honor would forgive me. I know ale, Echad. I am a brewer myself. Green is my name, sir, Tom Green, your very obedient servant, sir. And he drank as if pledging that same service he professed. Mr. Carroll observed him calmly, and a thought indifferently. Yuri determined honor me, said he. I am your debtor for your reflections upon wedding glasses. But ale, sir, is a beverage I don't affect, nor shall while there are vines in France. Ah, sighed Mr. Green rapturously. 'Tis a great country, France, is it not, sir? 'Tis not the general opinion here at present, but I make no doubt that it deserves your praise. And Paris now, persisted Mr. Green. They tell me 'tis a great city, a marvel of ages. There be those, Echad, that say London's but a kennel to it. Be there so? Quoth Mr. Carroll indifferently. You don't agree with them, belike? Asked Mr. Green, with eagerness. Pooh! Men will say anything, Mr. Carroll replied, and added pointedly. Men will talk, ye see. Not always, was a retort in a sly tone. I've known men to be prodigious short when they had aught to hide. Have ye so? Ye seem to have had a wide experience. And Mr. Carroll sauntered out, humming a French air through closed lips. Mr. Green looked after him with hardened eyes. He turned to the drawer who stood by. He's mighty close, said he. Mighty close. Yuri not perhaps quite the company he cares for, the drawer suggested candidly. Mr. Green looked at him. Very like, he snapped. How long does he stay here? Ye lost a rare chance of finding out when you let him go without inquiring, said the drawer. Mr. Green's face lost some of its chubbiness. When d'ye look to marry the landlady? Was his next question. The man stared. Cod, said he. Are ye daft? Mr. Green affected surprise. I mistook, it seems. Ye misled me by your pertness. Get me another nipperkin. Meanwhile, Mr. Carroll had taken his way above stairs to the room set apart for him. He dined to his satisfaction, and thereafter, his shapely, silk-clad legs thrown over a second chair, his waistcoat all unbuttoned. For the day was an almost midsummer warmth. He sat mightily at his ease, a decanter of sherry at his elbow, a pipe in one hand, and a book of Mr. Gay's poems in the other. But the ease went no further than the body, as witness the circumstances that his pipe was cold, the decanter tolerably full, and Mr. Gay's pleasant rhymes and quaint conceits of fancy all unheeded. The light, mercurial spirit which he had from nature and his unfortunate mother, and which he retained in spite of the stern training he had received at his adoptive father's hands, was heavy-fettered now. The mild fatigue of his journey through the heat of the day had led him to look forward to a voluptuous hour of indolence following upon dinner, with pipe and book and glass. The hour was come, the elements were there, but since he could not abandon himself to their dominion, the voluptuousness was wanting. The task before him haunted him with anticipatory remorse. It hung upon his spirit like a sick man's dream. It obtruded itself upon his constant thought, and the more he pondered it, the more did he sicken at what lay before him. Wrought upon by Everard's fanaticism that day in Paris some 3 weeks ago, infected for the time being by something of his adoptive father's fever, he had set his hands to the task in a glow of passionate exaltation. But the hour, the exaltation went, and reaction started in his soul, and yet draw back he dared not. Too long and sedulously had Everard trained his spirit to look upon the avenging of his mother as a duty. Believing that it was his duty, he thirsted on the one hand to fulfill it, whilst on the other, he recoiled in horror at the thought that the man upon whom he was to wreak that vengeance was his father, albeit a father whom he did not know, who had never seen him, who was not so much as aware of his existence. He sought forgetfulness in Mr. Gay. He had the delicate-minded man's inherent taste for verse, a quick ear for melody of words, the aesthete's love of beauty in phrase as of beauty in all else. And culture had quickened his perceptions, developed his capacity for appreciation. For the 10th time he called Leduc to light his pipe, and that done, he set his eye to the page once more. But it was like harnessing a bullock to a cart. Unmindful of the way it went and over what it traveled, his eye ambled heavily along the lines, and when he came to turn the page, he realized with a start that he had no impression of what he had read upon it. In sheer disgust, he tossed the book aside, and kicking away the second chair, rose lithely. He crossed to the window, and stood there gazing out at nothing, nor conscious of the incense that came to him from garden, from orchard, and from meadow. It needed a clatter of hoofs and a cloud of dust approaching from the north to draw his mind from its obsessing thoughts. He watched the yellow body of the coach as it came furiously onward, its 4 horses stretched to the gallop, postilion lusty of lungs and whip, and the great trail of dust left behind it spreading to right and left over flowering hedgerows to lose itself above the gold-flecked meadowland. On it came, to draw up there, at the very entrance to Maidstone, at the sign of the Adam and Eve. Mr. Carroll, leaning on the sill of his window, looked down with interest to see what manner of travelers were these that went at so red-hot a pace. From the rumble, a lackey swung himself to the rough cobbles of the yard. From within then came again landlady and chamberlain, and from the stable ostler and boy, obsequious all and of no interest to Mr. Carroll. Then the door of the coach was opened, the steps were let down, and there emerged, his hand upon the shoulder of the servant, a very fair man in black, with a parson's bands and neckcloth, a coal-black full-bottomed wig, and under this a white face, rather drawn and haggard, and thin lips perpetually agrin to flaunt 2 rows of yellow teeth disproportionately large. After him, and the more remarkable by contrast, came a tall, black-faced fellow, very brave in buff-colored cloth, with a fortune in lace at wrist and throat, and a heavily powdered tie wig. Lackey, chamberlain, and parson attended his alighting, and then he joined their ranks to attend in his turn, hat under arm, the last of these odd travelers. The interest grew. Mr. Carroll felt that the climax was about to be presented, and he leaned farther forward that he might obtain a better view of the awaited personage. In the silence, he caught a rustle of silk. A flowered petticoat appeared, as much of it as may be seen from a knee downwards, and from beneath this the daintiest foot conceivable was seen to grope an instant for the step. Another second, and the rest of her emerged. Mr. Carroll observed, and be it known that he had the very shrewdest eye for a woman, as became one of the race from which on his mother's side he sprang, that she was middling tall, chastely slender, having, as he judged from her high waist, a fine, clean length of limb. All this he observed and approved, and prayed for a glimpse of the face which her silken hood obscured and screened from his desiring gaze. She raised it at that moment, raised it in a timid, frightened fashion, as one who looks fearfully about to see that she is not remarked, and Mr. Carroll had a glimpse of an oval face, pale with a warm pallor, like the pallor of the peach, he thought, and touched, like the peach, with a faint hint of pink in either cheek. A pair of eyes, large, brown, and gentle as a saint's, met his, and Mr. Carroll realized that she was beautiful and that it might be good to look into those eyes at closer quarters. Seeing him, a faint exclamation escaped her, and she turned away in sudden haste to enter the inn. The fine gentleman looked up and scowled. The parson looked up and trembled. The ostler and his boy looked up and grinned. Then all swept forward and were screened by the porch from the wondering eyes of Mr. Carroll. He turned from the window with a sigh and stepped back to the table for the tinder box, that for the 11th time he might relight his pipe. He sat down, blew a cloud of smoke to the ceiling, and considered. His nature triumphed now over his recent preoccupation. The matter of the moment, which concerned him not at all, engrossed him beyond any other matter of his life. He was intrigued to know in what relation one to the other stood the 3 so oddly assorted travelers he had seen arrive. He bethought him that, after all, the odd assortment arose from the presence of the parson, and he wondered what the plague should any Christian, and seemingly a gentleman at that, be doing traveling with a parson. Then there was the wild speed at which they had come. The matter absorbed and vexed him. I fear he was inquisitive by nature. There came a moment when he went so far as to consider making his way below to pursue his investigations in situ. It would have been at great cost to his dignity, and this he was destined to be spared. A knock fell upon his door, and the landlady came in. She was genial, buxom, and apple-faced, as becomes a landlady. "There is a gentleman below," she was beginning, when Mr. Carroll interrupted her. "I would rather that you told me of the lady," said. "La, sir," she cried, displaying ivory teeth, her eyes cast upwards, hands upraised in gentle, mirthful protest. "La, sir, but I come from the lady, too." He looked at her. "A good ambassador," said he, "should begin with the best news, not added as an afterthought. But proceed, I beg. You give me hope, mistress. They send their compliments, and would be prodigiously obliged if you was to give yourself the trouble of stepping below." "Of stepping below?" he inquired, head on one side, solemn eyes upon the hostess. Would it be impertinent to inquire what they may want with me? I think they want you for a witness, sir. For a witness? Am I to testify to the lady's perfection of face and shape, to the heaven that sits in her eyes, to the miracle she calls her ankle? Are these and other things besides of the same kind what I am required to witness? If so, they could not have sent for one more qualified. I am an expert, ma'am. Oh, sir, nay, she laughed. 'Tis a marriage they need you for. Mr. Carroll opened his queer eyes a little wider. Soho, said he. The parson has explained. Then he felt thoughtful. His tone lost its note of flippancy. This gentleman who sends his compliments, does he send his name? He does not, sir, but I overheard it. Confide in me, Mr. Carroll invited her. He is a great gentleman. She prepared him. No matter. I love great gentlemen. They call him Lord Rotherby. At that sudden and utterly unexpected mention of his half-brother's name, his unknown half-brother, Mr. Carroll came to his feet with an alacrity which a more shrewd observer would have set down to some cause other than mere respect for a viscount. The hostess was shrewd, but not shrewd enough, and if Mr. Carroll's expression changed for an instant, it resumed its habitual half-scornful calm so swiftly that it would have needed eyes and exceptional quickness to have read it. Enough, he said. Who could deny his lordship? Shall I tell him you are coming? She inquired, her hand already upon the door. A moment, he begged, detaining her. 'Tis a runaway marriage, this, eh? Her full-hearted smile beamed on him again. She was a very woman, with a taste for romantic, loving love. What else, sir? She laughed. And why, mistress? He inquired, eyeing her, his fingers plucking at his nether lip. Do they desire my testimony? His lordship's own man will stand witness, for one, but they'll need another, she explained, her voice reflecting astonishment at his question. True, but why do they need me? He pressed her. Heard you no reason given why they should prefer me to your chamberlain, your ostler, or your drawer? She knit her brows and shrugged impatient shoulders. Here was a deal of pother about a trifling affair. His lordship saw you as he entered, sir, and inquired of me who you might be. His lordship flatters me by this interest. My looks please him, let us hope. And you answered him, what? That your honor is a gentleman newly crossed from France. You are well informed, mistress, said Mr. Carroll, a thought tartly, for if his speech was tainted with a French accent, it was in so slight a degree as surely to be imperceptible to the vulgar. Your clothes, sir, the landlady explained, and he bethought him, then, that the greater elegance and refinement of his French apparel must indeed proclaim his origin to one who had so many occasions of seeing travelers from Gaul. That might even account for Mr. Green's attempts to talk to him of France. His mind returned to the matter of the bridal pair below. You told him that, said he, and what said his lordship then? He turned to the parson. The very man for you, S. Jenkins, says he. And the parson, this Jenkins, what answer did he make? Excellently thought, he says, grinning. And you yourself, mistress, what inference did you draw? I inference, ma'am. Did you not gather that this was not only a runaway match, but a clandestine one? My lord can depend upon the discretion of his servant, no doubt. For other witness, he would prefer some passer-by, some stranger who will go his ways tomorrow, and not be like to be heard of again. Lard, sir, cried the landlady, her eyes wide with astonishment. Mr. Carroll smiled enigmatically. 'Tis so, I assure ye, ma'am. My Lord Rotherby is of a family singularly cautious in the unions it contracts. In entering matrimony, he prefers, no doubt, to leave a back door open for quiet retreat should he repent him later. Your honor has his lordship's acquaintance, then? Quoth the landlady. It is a misfortune from which heaven has hitherto preserved me, but which the devil, it seems, now thrusts upon me. It will, nevertheless, interest me to see him at close quarters. Come, ma'am. As they were going out, Mr. Carroll checked suddenly. Why, what's o'clock? Said he. She stared. So abruptly came the question. Past 4, sir, she answered. He uttered a short laugh. Decidedly, said he. His lordship must be viewed at closer quarters. And he led the way downstairs. In the passage, he waited for her to come up with him. You had best announce me by name, he suggested. It is Carroll. She nodded, and, going forward, threw open a door, inviting him to enter. "Mr. Carroll," she announced, obedient to his injunction. And as he went in, she closed the door behind him. From a group of three that had been sitting about the polished walnut table, the tall gentleman in buff and silver rose swiftly and advanced to the newcomer. What time Mr. Carroll made a rapid observation of this brother whom he was meeting under circumstances so odd and by a chance so peculiar. He beheld a man of 25, or perhaps a little more, tall and well-made, if already inclining to heaviness, with a swarthy face, full-lipped, big nose, black-eyed, an obstinate chin, and a deplorable brow. At sight, by instinct, he disliked his brother. He wondered vaguely, was Lord Rotherby in appearance at all like their common father? But beyond that, he gave little thought to the tie that bound them. Indeed, he has placed it upon record that, saving in such moments of high stress as followed in their later connection, he never could remember that they were the sons of the same parent. I thought, was Rotherby's greeting, a note almost of irritation in his voice, that the woman said you were from France. It was an odd welcome, but its oddness at the moment went unheeded. His swift scrutiny of his brother over, Mr. Carroll's glance passed on to become riveted upon the face of the lady at the table's head. In addition to the beauties which from above he had descried, he now perceived that her mouth was sensitive and kindly, her whole expression one of gentle wistfulness, exceeding sweet to contemplate. What did she in this galley, he wondered, and he has confessed that just as at sight he had disliked his brother, so from that hour, from the very instant of his eyes alighting on her there, he loved the lady whom his brother was wed, felt a surpassing need of her, conceived that in the meeting of their eyes their very souls had met, so that it was to him as if he had known her since he had known anything. Meanwhile, there was his lordship's question to be answered. He answered mechanically, his eyes upon the lady, and she returning the gaze of those queer, greenish eyes with a sweetness that gave place to no confusion. "I am from France, sir." "But not French," his lordship continued. Mr. Carroll fetched his eyes from the ladies to meet Lord Rotherby's. "More than half French," he replied, the French taint in his accent growing slightly more pronounced. "It was but an accident that my father was an Englishman." Rotherby laughed softly, a thought contemptuously. Foreigners were things which in his untraveled, unlettered ignorance he despised. The difference between a Frenchman and a South Sea Islander was a thing never quite appreciated by his lordship. Some subtle difference he had no doubt existed, but for him it was enough to know that both were foreigners. Therefore it logically followed, both were kin. "Your words, sir, might be oddly interpreted." "'Pon honor, they might," said he, and laughed softly again with singular insolence. "If they have amused your lordship, I am happy," said Mr. Carroll in such a tone that Rotherby looked to see whether he was being roasted. "You wanted me, I think. I beg that you'll not thank me for having descended. It was an honor." It occurred to Rotherby that this was a veiled reproof for the ill manners of the omission. Again he looked sharply at this man who was scanning him with such interest, but he detected in the calm, high-bred face nothing to suggest that any mockery was intended. Belatedly, he fell to doing the very thing that Mr. Carroll had begged him to leave undone. He fell to thanking him. As for Mr. Carroll himself, not even the queer position into which he had been thrust could repress his characteristics. What time his lordship thanked him, he looked about him at the other occupants of the room, and found that, besides the parson, sitting pale and wide-eyed at the table, there was present in the background his lordship's man, a quiet fellow, quietly garbed in gray, with a shrewd face and shrewd, shifty eyes. Mr. Carroll saw and registered, for future use, the reflection that eyes that are over-shrewd are seldom wont to look out of honest heads. "You are desired," his lordship informed him, "to be witness to a marriage. So much the landlady had made known to me. It is not, I trust, a task that will occasion you any scruples." "None. On the contrary, it is the absence of the marriage might do that." The smooth, easy tones so masked the inner meaning of the answer that his lordship scarce attended to the words. "Then we had best get on. We are in haste." "'Tis a characteristic rashness of folk about to enter wedlock," said Mr. Carroll, as he approached the table with his lordship, his eyes as he spoke turning full upon the bride. My lord laughed, musically enough, but overloud for a man of brains or breeding. "Marry in haste, quoth he. You are penetration itself." Mr. Carroll praised him. "'Twill take a shrewd rogue to better me," his lordship agreed. Yet an honest man might worst you. One never knows. But the lady's patience is being taxed. It was as well he added that, for his lordship had turned with intent to ask him what he meant. Aye, come, Jenkins, get on with your patter. Gaskell, he called to his man, stand forward here. Then he took his place beside the lady, who had risen, and stood pale, with eyes cast down and, as Mr. Carroll alone saw, the faintest quiver at the corners of her lips. This served to increase Mr. Carroll's already considerable cogitations. The parson faced them, fumbling at his book, Mr. Carroll's eyes watching with that cold, level glance of theirs. The parson looked up, met that uncanny gaze, displayed his teeth in a grin of terror, fell to trembling, and dropped the book in his confusion. Mr. Carroll, smiling sardonically, stooped to restore it him. There followed a fresh pause. Mr. Jenkins, having lost his place, seemed at some pains to find again, amazing indeed, in one whose affection should have rendered him so familiar with its pages. Mr. Carroll continued to watch him in silence, and, as an observer might have thought, as, indeed, Gaskell did think, though he said nothing at the time, with wicked relish. Chapter 3. The Witness. At last the page was found again by Mr. Jenkins. Having found it, he hesitated still a moment, then cleared his throat, and in the manner of one hurling himself forward upon a desperate venture, he began to read. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here in the sight of God, he read, and on in a nasal, whining voice, which not only was the very voice you would have expected from such a man, but in accordance, too, with sound clerical convention. The bridal pair stood before him, the groom with a slight flush on his cheeks and a bright glitter in his black eyes, which were not nice to see. The bride with bowed head and bosom heaving, as in response to inward tumult. The cleric came to the end of his exordium, paused a moment, and whether because he gathered confidence, whether because he realized the impressive character of the fresh matter upon which he entered, he proceeded now in a firmer, more sonorous voice. I require and charge you both as you will answer on the dreadful day of judgment. You forgot something, Mr. Carroll interrupted blandly. His lordship swung round with an impatient gesture and an impatient snort. The lady, too, looked up suddenly, whilst Mr. Jenkins seemed to fall into an utter panic. "Wah, what?" he stammered. "What have I forgot?" "To read the directions, I think." His lordship scowled darkly upon Mr. Carroll, who heeded him not at all, but watched the lady sideways. Mr. Jenkins turned first scarlet, then paler than he had been before, and bent his eyes to the book to read in a slightly puzzled voice the italicized words above the period he had embarked upon. "And also speaking unto the persons that shall be married, he shall say," he read, and looked up inquiry, his faintly colored, prominent eyes endeavoring to sustain Mr. Carroll's steady glance, but failing miserably. "'Tis farther back," Mr. Carroll informed him in answer to that mute question, and as the fellow moistened his thumb to turn back the pages, Mr. Carroll saved him the trouble. "It says, I think, that the man should be on your right hand and the woman on your left. Ye seem to have reversed matters, Mr. Jenkins, but perhaps ye are left-handed." "Stab me," was Mr. Jenkins' most uncanonical comment. "I vow I am overflustered. Your lordship is so impatient with me. This gentleman is right, but that I was so flustered. Will you not change places with his lordship, ma'am?" They changed places, after the Viscount had thanked Mr. Carroll shortly and cursed the parson with circumstance and fervor. It was well done on his lordship's part, but the lady did not seem convinced by it. Her face looked whiter, and her eyes had an alarmed, half-suspicious expression. "We must begin again," said Mr. Jenkins. And he began again. Mr. Carroll listened and watched, and he began to enjoy himself exceedingly. He had not reckoned upon so rich an entertainment when he had consented to come down to witness this odd ceremony. His sense of humor conquered every other consideration, and the circumstance that Lord Rotherby was his brother, if remembered at all, served but to add a spice to the situation. Out of sheer deviltry, he waited until Mr. Jenkins had labored for a second time through the opening periods. Again he allowed him to get as far as, "I charge and require you both dash," before again he interrupted him. "There is something else ye forgot," said he in that sweet, quiet voice of his. This was too much for Rotherby. "Damn you," he swore, turning a livid face upon Mr. Carroll, and failed to observe that at the sound of that harsh oath and at the sight of his furious face, the lady recoiled from him, the suspicion lately in her face turning first to conviction and then to absolute horror. "I do not think you are civil," said Mr. Carroll critically. "It was in your interest that I spoke." "Then I'll thank you in my interest to hold your tongue," his lordship stormed. "In that case," said Mr. Carroll, "I must still speak in the interest of the lady. Since you desire me to be a witness, I'll do my duty by you both and see you properly wed." "Now, what the devil may you mean by that?" demanded his lordship, betraying himself more and more at every word. Mr. Jenkins, in a spasm of terror, sought to pour oil upon these waters. "My lord," he bleated, teeth and eyeballs protruding from his pallid face. "My lord, perhaps the gentleman is right. Perhaps," he gulped, and turned to Mr. Carroll. "What does she think we have forgotten now?" he asked. "The time of day," Mr. Carroll replied, and watched the puzzled look that came into both their faces. "Do ye deal in riddles with us?" quoth his lordship. "What have we to do with the time of day?" "Best ask the parson," suggested Mr. Carroll. Rotherby swung round again to Jenkins. Jenkins spread his hands in mute bewilderment and distress. Mr. Carroll laughed silently. "I'll not be married. I'll not be married." It was the lady who spoke, and those odd words were the first that Mr. Carroll heard from her lips. They made an excellent impression upon him, bearing witness to her good sense and judgment, although belatedly aroused, and informing him, although the pitch was strained just now, that the rich contralto of her voice was full of music. He was a judge of voices, as of much else besides. "Hoity-toity," quoth his lordship, between petulance and simulated amusement. "What's all the pother? Hortensia, dear." "I'll not be married," she repeated firmly, her wide brown eyes meeting his in absolute defiance, head thrown back, face pale but fearless. "I don't believe," ventured Mr. Carroll, "that you could be if you desired it. Leastways not here and now and by this." And he jerked a contemptuous thumb sideways at Mr. Jenkins, toward whom he had turned his shoulder. "Perhaps you have realized it for yourself." A shudder ran through her. Color flooded into her face and out again, leaving it paler than before. Yet she maintained a brave front that moved Mr. Carroll profoundly to an even greater admiration of her. Rotherby, his great jaw set, his hands clenched and eyes blazing, stood irresolute between her and Mr. Carroll. Jenkins, in sheer terror, now sank limply to a chair, whilst Gaskell looked on, a perfect servant, as immovable outwardly and unconcerned as if he had been a piece of furniture. Then his lordship turned again to Carroll. "You take a deal upon yourself, sir," said he menacingly. "A deal of what?" wondered Mr. Carroll blandly. The question nonplussed Rotherby. He swore ferociously. "By God," he fumed, "I'll have you make good your insinuations. You shall disabuse this lady's mind. You shall, damn you, or I'll compel you." Mr. Carroll smiled very engagingly. The matter was speeding excellently. A comedy the like of which he did not remember to have played a part in since his student days at Oxford 10 years and more ago. "I had thought," said he, "that the woman who summoned me to be a witness of this our wedding," there was a whole volume of criticism in his utterance of the word, "was a landlady of the Adam and Eve. I begin to think that she was this lady's good angel. Fate, clothed for once, matronly and benign." Then he dropped the easy, bantering manner with a suddenness that was startling. Gallic fire blazed up through British training. "Let us speak plainly, my Lord Rotherby. This marriage is no marriage. It is a mockery and a villainy. And that scoundrel, worthy servant of his master, is no parson. No, not so much as a hedge parson is he. Madam," he proceeded, turning now to the frightened lady, "you have been grossly abused by these villains." "Sir," blazed Rotherby at last, breaking in upon his denunciation, hand clapped to sword. "Do ye dare use such words to me?" Mr. Jenkins got to his feet in a slow, foolish fashion. He put out a hand to stay his lordship. The lady in the background looked on with wide eyes, very breathless, one hand to her bosom as if to control its heave. Mr. Carroll proceeded, undismayed, to make good his accusation. He had dropped back into his slightly listless air of thinly veiled persiflage, and he appeared to address the lady, to explain the situation to her, rather than to justify the charge he had made. A blind man could have perceived, from the rustling of his prayer book when he fumbled at it, that the contents were strange to him, and observed the volume. he continued, picking it up and flaunting it aloft. "Fire new, not a thumb mark anywhere. Purchased expressly for this foul venture. Is there aught else so clean and fresh about the scurvy thief?" "You shall moderate your tone, sir," began his lordship in a snarl. "He sets you each on the wrong side of him," continued Mr. Carroll, all imperturbable, lacking even the sense to read the directions which the book contains, and he has no thought for the circumstance that the time of day is uncanonical. "Is more needed, madam?" "So much was not needed," said she, "though I am your debtor, sir." Her voice was marvelously steady, ice cold with scorn, a royal anger increasing the glory of her eyes. Rotherby's hand fell away from his sword. He realized that bluster was not the most convenient weapon here. He addressed Mr. Carroll very haughtily. "You are from France, sir, and something may be excused you, but not quite all. You have used expressions that are not to be offered to a person of my quality. I fear you scarcely apprehend it." "As well, no doubt, as those who avoid you, sir," answered Mr. Carroll, with cool contempt, his dislike of the man and of the business in which he found him engaged mounting above every other consideration. His lordship frowned inquiry. "And who may those be?" "Most decent folk, I should conceive, if this be an example of your ways." "By God, sir, you are a thought too pert. We'll mend that presently. I will first convince you of your error, and you, Hortensia." "It will be interesting," said Mr. Carroll, and meant it. Rotherby turned from him, keeping a tight rein upon his anger, and so much restraint in so tempestuous a man was little short of wonderful. "Hortensia," he said, "this is fool's talk. What object could I seek to serve?" She drew back another step, contempt and loathing in her face. "This man," he continued, flinging a hand toward Jenkins and checked upon the word. He swung round upon the fellow. "Have you fooled me, knave?" he bawled. "Is it true what this man says of you, that ye're no parson at all?" Jenkins quailed and shriveled. Here was a move for which he was all unprepared and knew not how to play to it. On the bridegroom's part was excellently acted, yet it came too late to be convincing. "You'll have the license in your pocket, no doubt, my lord," put in Mr. Carroll. "It will help to convince the lady of the honesty of your intentions. It will show her that you were abused by this thief for the sake of the guinea you were to pay him." That was checkmate, and Lord Rotherby realized it. There remained him nothing but violence, and in violence he was exceedingly at home, being a member of the Hellfire Club and having served in the Bold Bucks under his Grace of Wharton. "You damned, infernal marplot, you blasted meddler," he swore, and some other things besides, froth on his lips, the veins of his brow congested. "What affair was this of yours?" "I thought you desired me for a witness," Mr. Carroll reminded him. "I did. Let me perish," said Rotherby. "And I wish to the devil I had bit my tongue out first." "The loss to eloquence had been irreparable," sighed Mr. Carroll, his eyes upon a beam of the ceiling. Rotherby stared and choked. "Is there no sense in you, you gibbering parrot?" he inquired. "What are you, an actor or fool?" "A gentleman, I hope," said Mr. Carroll urbanely. "What are you?" "I'll learn you," said his lordship, and plucked at his sword. "I see," said Mr. Carroll in the same quiet voice that thinly veiled his inward laughter. "A bully!" With more oaths, my lord heaved himself forward. Mr. Carroll was without weapons. He had left his sword above stairs, not deeming that he would be needing it at a wedding. He never moved hand or foot as Rotherby bore down upon him, but his greenish eyes grew keen and very watchful. He began to wonder had he indulged his amusement overlong, and imperceptibly he adjusted his balance for a spring. Rotherby stretched out to lunge, murder in his inflamed eyes. "I'll silence you." There was a swift rustle behind him. His hand, drawn back to thrust, was suddenly caught, and ere he realized that the sword was wrenched from fingers that held it lightly. Unprepared for this. "You dog," said the lady's voice, strident now with anger and disdain. She had his sword. He faced about with a horrible oath. Mr. Carroll conceived that he was becoming a thought disgusting. Hoofs and wheels ground on the cobbles of the yard and came to a halt outside, but went unheeded in the excitement of the moment. Rotherby stood facing her, she facing him, the sword in her hand, and a look in her eyes that promised she would use it upon him did he urge her. A moment thus of utter, breathless silence. Then, As if her passion mounted and swept all aside, she raised the sword, and using it as a whip, she lashed him with it until at the third blow it rebounded to the table and was snapped. Instinctively his lordship had put up his hands to save his face, and across one of them a red line grew and oozed forth blood, which spread to envelop it. Gaskell advanced with a sharp cry of concern, but Rotherby waved him back, and the gesture shook blood from his hand, like raindrops. His face was livid. His eyes were upon the woman he had gone so near betraying with a look that none might read. Jenkins swayed, sickly, against the table, whilst Mr. Carroll observed all with critical eye and came to the conclusion that she must have loved this villain. The hilt and stump of sword clattered in the fireplace, whither she hurled it. A moment she caught her face in her hands, and a sob shook her almost fiercely. Then she came past his lordship, across the room to Mr. Carroll, Rotherby making no shift to detain her. "Take me away, sir. Take me away," she begged him. Mr. Carroll's gloomy face lightened suddenly. "Your servant, ma'am," said he, and made her a bow. "I think you are very well advised," he added cheerfully, and offered her his arm. She took it and moved a step or two toward the door. It opened at that moment, and a burly, elderly man came in heavily. The lady halted. A cry escaped her, a cry of pain almost, and she fell to weeping there, and then Mr. Carroll was very mystified. The newcomer paused at the sight that met him, considered it with a dull blue eye, and for all that he looked stupid, it seemed he had wit enough to take in the situation. "So," said he, with heavy mockery, "I might have spared myself the trouble of coming after you, for it seems that she has found you out in time, you villain." Rotherby turned sharply at that voice. He fell back a step, his brow seeming to grow blacker than it had been. "Father!" he exclaimed, but there was little that was filial in the accent. Mr. Carroll staggered and recovered himself. It had been indeed a staggering shock, for here, of course, was his own father, too. Chapter 4. Mr. Green. There was a quick patter of feet, the rustle of a hooped petticoat, and the lady was in the arms of my Lord Ostermore. "Forgive me, my lord," she was crying. "Oh, forgive me. I was a little fool, and I have been punished enough already." To Mr. Carroll, this was a surprising development. The Earl, whose arms seemed to have opened readily enough to receive her, was patting her soothingly upon the shoulder. "Pish! What's this? What's this?" he grumbled. Yet his voice, Mr. Carroll noticed, was if anything kindly, but it must be confessed that it was a dull, gruff voice, seldom indicating any shade of emotion, unless, as sometimes happened, it was raised in anger. He was frowning now upon his son over the girl's head, his bushy, grizzled brows contracted. Mr. Carroll observed, and with what interest you should well imagine, that Lord Ostermore was still in a general way a handsome man, of a good height, but slightly excessive bulk. He had a face that still retained a fair shape, short-necked, florid, and plethoric. He had the air of a man who seldom makes a long illness at the end. His eyes were very blue, and the lids were puffed and heavy, whilst the mouth, Mr. Carroll remarked in a critical, detached spirit, was stupid rather than sensuous. He made his survey swiftly, and the result left him wondering. Meanwhile, the Earl was addressing his son, whose hand was being bandaged by Gaskell. There was little variety in his invective. "You villain," he bawled at him. "You damned villain." Then he patted the girl's head. "You found the scoundrel out before you married him," said he. "I am glad on't, glad on't." "'Tis such a reversing of the usual order of things that it calls for wonder," said Mr. Carroll. "Eh," quoth his lordship. "Who the devil are you?" "One of his friends." "Your lordship overwhelms me," said Mr. Carroll gravely, making a bow. He observed the bewilderment in Ostermore's eyes, and began to realize at that early stage of their acquaintance that to speak ironically to the Earl of Ostermore was not to speak at all. It was Hortensia, a very tearful Hortensia, now who explained. "This gentleman saved me, my lord," she said. "Saved you?" quoth he dully. "How did he come to save you?" "He discovered the parson," she explained. The Earl looked more and more bewildered. "Just so," said Mr. Carroll. "It was my privilege to discover that the parson is no parson." "The parson is no parson?" echoed his lordship, scowling more and more. "Then what the devil is a parson?" Hortensia freed herself from his protecting arms. "He is a villain," she said, who was hired by my Lord Rotherby to come here and pretend to be a parson. Her eyes flamed. Her cheeks were scarlet. God help me for a fool, my lord, to put my faith in that man. Oh, she choked. The shame, the burning shame of it. I would have had a brother to punish him. Lord Ostermore was crimson, too, with indignation. Mr. Carroll was relieved to see that he was capable of so much emotion. Did I not warn you against him, Hortensia? Said he. Could you not have trusted that I knew him? I, his father, to my everlasting shame? Then he swung upon Rotherby. You dog, he began in there. Being a man of little invention, words failed him, and wrath alone remained very intense, but entirely inarticulate. Rotherby moved forward till he reached the table, then stood leaning upon it, scowling at the company from under his black brows. "'Tis your lordship alone is to blame for this," he informed his father, with a vain pretense of composure. "I am to blame," gurgled his lordship, veins swelling at his brow. "I am to blame that you should have carried her off thus? And by God, had you meant to marry her honestly and fittingly, I might find in my heart to forgive you. But to practice such villainy, to attempt to put this foul trick upon the child." Mr. Carroll thought for an instant of another child whose child he was, and a passion of angry mockery at the forgetfulness of age welled up from the bitter soul of him. Outwardly, he remained a very mirror for placidity. "Your lordship had threatened to disinherit me if I married her," said Rotherby. "'Twas to save her from you," Ostermore explained, entirely unnecessarily. "And you thought by God. Sir, I marvel you have the courage to confront me. I marvel. Take me away, my lord," Hortensia begged him, touching his arm. We were best away," said the Earl, drawing her to him. Then he flung a hand out at Rotherby in a gesture of repudiation, of anathema. "But 'tis not the end on for you, you knave. What I threaten, I will perform. I'll disinherit you. Not a penny of mine shall come to you. Ye shall starve for aught I care. Starve, and the world be well rid of a villain. I disown you. Yeri no son of mine. I'll take oath Yeri no son of mine." Mr. Carroll thought that, on the contrary, Rotherby was very much his father's son, and he added to his observations upon human nature the reflection that sinners are oddly blessed with short memories. He was entirely dispassionate again by now. As for Rotherby, he received his father's anger with a scornful smile and a curling lip. "You'll disinherit me?" quoth he in mockery. "And of what, pray? If report speaks true, you'll be needing to inherit something yourself to bear you through your present straightness." He shrugged and produced his snuff-box with an offensive simulation of nonchalance. "Ye cannot cut the entail," he reminded his almost apoplectic sire, and took snuff delicately, sauntering windowwards. "Cut the entail? The entail?" cried the Earl, and laughed in a manner that seemed to bode no good. "Have you ever troubled to ascertain what it amounts to? You fool, it wouldn't keep you in snuff." Lord Rotherby halted in his stride, half-turned, and looked at his father over his shoulder. The sneering mask was wiped from his face, which became blank. "My lord," he began. The Earl waved a silencing hand, and turned with dignity to Hortensia. "Come, child," said he. Then he remembered something. "Gad!" he exclaimed. "I have forgot the parson. I'll have him jailed. I'll have him hanged if the law will help me. Come forward, man." Ignoring the invitation, Mr. Jenkins scuttled, rat-like, across the room, mounted the window seat, and was gone in a flash through the open window. He dropped plump upon Mr. Green, who was crouching underneath. The pair rolled over together in a mold of flower bed. Then Mr. Green clutched Mr. Jenkins, and Mr. Jenkins squealed like a trapped rabbit. Mr. Green thrust his fist carefully into the mock parson's mouth. "Essay, you blubbering fool," he snapped in his ear. "My business is not with you. Lie still." Within the room, all stood at gaze, following the sudden flight of Mr. Jenkins. Then Lord Ostermore made as if to approach the window, but Hortensia restrained him. "Let the wretch go," she said. "The blame is not his. What is he but my lord's tool?" And her eyes scorched Rotherby with such a glance of scorn as must have killed any but a shameless man. Then, turning to the demurely observant gentleman who had done her such good service, "Mr. Carroll," she said, "I want to thank you. I want my lord here to thank you." Mr. Carroll bowed to her. I beg that you will not think of it, said he. It is I who will remain in your debt. Is your name Carroll, sir? Quoth the Earl. He had a trick of fastening upon the inconsequent, though that was scarcely the case now. That, my lord, is my name. I believe I have the honor of sharing it with your lordship. Ye'll belong to some younger branch of the family, the Earl supposed. Like enough, some outlying branch, answered the imperturbable Carroll, a jest which only himself could appreciate, and that bitterly. And how came you into this? Rotherby sneered audibly, in self-mockery, no doubt, as he came to reflect that it was he himself had had him fetched. They needed another witness, said Mr. Carroll, and hearing there was at the inn a gentleman newly crossed from France, his lordship no doubt opined that a traveler, here today and gone for good tomorrow, would be just a witness that he needed for the business he proposed. That circumstance aroused my suspicions, but the Earl, as usual, seemed to have fastened upon the minor point, although again it was not so. You are newly crossed from France, said he. Aye, and your name is the same as mine. 'Twas what I was advised. Mr. Carroll flashed a sidelong glance at Rotherby, who had turned to stare at his father, and in his heart he cursed the stupidity of my Lord Ostermore. If this proposed to be a member of a conspiracy, heaven help that same conspiracy. Were you, by any chance, going to seek me in town, Mr. Carroll? Mr. Carroll suppressed a desire to laugh. Here was a way to deal with state secrets. Aye, my lord, he inquired, with an assumed air of surprise. The Earl looked at him, and from him to Rotherby, bethought himself, and started so overtly that Rotherby's eyes grew narrow, the lines of his mouth tightened. Nay, of course not, he blustered clumsily. But Rotherby laughed aloud. Now, what a plague is all this mystery? He inquired. Mystery? Quoth my lord. What mystery should there be? 'Tis what I would fain be informed, he answered in a voice that showed he meant to gain the information. He sauntered forward towards Carroll, his eye playing mockingly over this gentleman from France. Now, sir, said he, whose messenger may you be, eh? What's all this? Rotherby, the Earl interrupted in a voice intended to be compelling. Come away, Mr. Carroll, he added quickly. I'll not have any gentleman who has shown himself a friend to my ward here affronted by that rascal. Come away, sir. Not so fast, ecod. It was another voice that broke in upon them. Rotherby started round. Gaskell, in the shadows of the cowled fireplace, jumped in sheer alarm. All stared at the window, whence the voice proceeded. They beheld a plump, chubby-faced little man, astride the sill, a pistol displayed with ostentation in his hand. Mr. Carroll was the only one with the presence of mind to welcome him. Ha! said he, smiling engagingly. My little friend, the brewer of ale. Let no one leave this room, said Mr. Green with a great dignity. Then, with rather less dignity, he whistled shrilly through his fingers and got down lightly into the room. Sir, blustered the Earl, this is an intrusion, an impertinence. What do you want? The papers this gentleman carries, said Mr. Green, indicating Carroll with the hand that held the pistol. The Earl looked alarmed, which was foolish in him, thought Mr. Carroll. Rotherby covered his mouth with his hand, after the fashion of one who masks a smile. Ye rightly serve for meddling, said he with relish. Out with them, the chubby man demanded. Ye'll gain nothing by resistance. So don't be obstinate now. I could be nothing so discourteous, said Mr. Carroll. Would it be prying on my part to inquire what may be your interest in my papers? His serenity lessened the Earl's anxieties, but bewildered him, and it took the edge off the malicious pleasure which Rotherby was beginning to experience. I am obeying the orders of my Lord Carteret, the Secretary of State, said Mr. Green. I was to watch for a gentleman from France with letters from my Lord Ostermore. He had a messenger a week ago to tell him to look for such a visitor. He took the messenger, if you must know, and, well, we induced him to tell us what was the message he had carried. There is so much mystery in all this that my Lord Carteret desires more knowledge on the subject. I think you are the gentleman I am looking for. Mr. Carroll looked him over with an amused eye and laughed. It distresses me, said he, to see so much good thought wasted. Mr. Green was abashed a moment, but he recovered quickly, No doubt he had met the cool type before. "Come, come," said he. "No blustering. Out with your papers, my fine fellow." The door opened, and a couple men came in. Over their shoulders, ere the door closed again, Mr. Carroll had a glimpse of the landlady's rosy face, alarm in her glance. The newcomers were dirty rogues, tipstaves, recognizable at a glance. One of them wore a ragged bob wig, the cast-off, no doubt, of some gentleman's gentleman, fished out of the sixpenny tub in Rosemary Lane. It was ill-fitting, and wisps of the fellow's own unkempt hair hung out in places. The other wore no wig at all. His yellow thatch fell in streaks from under his shabby hat, which he had the ill manners to retain until Lord Ostermore knocked it from his head with a blow of his cane. Both were fiery bottle-nosed, and neither appeared to have shaved for a week or so. "Now," quoth Mr. Green, "will you hand them over your own accord, or must I have you searched?" And a wave of the hand towards the advancing myrmidons indicated the searchers. "You go too far, sir," blustered the Earl. "Aye, surely," put in Mr. Carroll. "You are mad to think a gentleman is to submit to being searched by any knave that comes to him with a cock and bull tale about the Secretary of State." Mr. Green leered again and produced a paper. "There," said he, "is my Lord Carteret warrant, signed and sealed." Mr. Carroll glanced over it with a disdainful eye. "It is in blank," said he. "Just so," agreed Mr. Green. "Carte blanche, as you say over the water. If you insist," he offered obligingly, "I'll fill in your name before we proceed." Mr. Carroll shrugged his shoulders. "It might be well," said he, "if you are to search me at all." Mr. Green advanced to the table. The writing implements provided for the wedding were still there. He took up a pen, scrawled a name across the blank, dusted it with sand, and presented it again to Mr. Carroll. The latter nodded. "I'll not trouble you to search me," said he. "I would as soon not have these noblemen of yours for my valets." He thrust his hands into the pockets of his fine coat and brought forth several papers. These he proffered to Mr. Green, who took them between satisfaction and amazement. Ostermore stared, too stricken for words at this meek surrender. And well was it for Mr. Carroll that he was so stricken, for had he spoken he had assuredly betrayed himself. Hortensia, Mr. Carroll observed, watched his cowardly yielding with an eye of stern contempt. Rotherby looked on with a dark face that betrayed nothing. Meanwhile, Mr. Green was running through the papers, and as fast as he ran through them, he permitted himself certain comments that passed for humor with his followers. There could be no doubt that in his own social stratum Mr. Green must have been accounted something of a wag. "Ha! What's this? A bill for snuff. My Lord Carteret will snuff you, sir. He'll tobacco you, ecod. He'll smoke you first and snuff you afterwards." He flung the bill aside. "Phew," he whistled. "Verses. To Theocritus upon sailing for Albion. That's mighty choice. Gee, write verses, sir? Heyday, 'tis an occupation to which I have succumbed in moments of weakness. I crave your indulgence, Mr. Green." Mr. Green perceived that here was a weak attempt at irony, and went on with his investigations. He came to the last of the papers Mr. Carroll had handed him, glanced at it, swore coarsely, and dropped it. Lord Ostermore heaved a sigh of relief. The hard look had faded from Hortensia's eyes. "What does she mean, giving me this rubbish?" "I offer you my excuses for the contents of my pockets," said Mr. Carroll. "You see, I did not expect to be honored by your inquisition. Had I but known—" Mr. Green struck an attitude. "Now attend to me, sir. I am a servant of His Majesty's government." "His Majesty's government cannot be sufficiently congratulated," said Mr. Carroll, the irrepressible. Mr. Green banged the table. "Are you rallying me, ecod? You have upset the ink," Mr. Carroll pointed out to him. "Damn the ink," swore the spy. "And damn you for a Tom o' Bedlam. I ask you again, what d'ye mean, giving me this rubbish?" "You asked me to turn out my pockets." "I asked you for the letter ye have brought Lord Ostermore." "I am sorry," said Mr. Carroll, and eyed the other sympathetically. "I am sorry to disappoint you. But, then, you assume too much when you assume that I had such a letter. I have obliged you to the fullest extent in my power. I do not think you show a becoming gratitude." Mr. Green eyed him blankly a moment, then exploded. "Ecod, sir, you are cool. It is a condition we do not appear to share. D'ye say ye be brought his lordship no letter from France? Thundered the spy. What else ha ye come to England for? To study manners, sir, said Mr. Carroll, bowing. That was the last drop in the cup of Mr. Green's endurance. He waved his men towards a gentleman from France. Find it, he bade them shortly. Mr. Carroll drew himself up with a great dignity and waved the bailiffs back, his white face set, an unpleasant glimmer in his eyes. A moment, he cried. You have no authority to go to such extremes. I make no objection to being searched, but every objection to being soiled, and I'll not have the fingers of these scavengers about my person. And you are right, egad, cried Lord Ostermore, advancing. Harkee, you dirty spy, this is no way to deal with gentlemen. Be off, now, and take your carrion crows with you, or I'll have my grooms in with their whips to you. To me? Roared Green. I represent the Secretary of State. Ye'll represent a side of raw venison if you tarry here. The Earl, promise him. D'ye dare look me in the eye? D'ye dare, you rogue? D'ye know who I am? And don't wag that pistol, my fine fellow. Be off now. Away with you. Mr. Green looked his name. The rosiness was all departed from his cheeks. He quivered with suppressed wrath. If I go, giving way to constraint, what shall you say to my Lord Carteret? He asked. What concern may that be of yours, Sarah? It will be some concern of yours, my lord. Mr. Carroll interposed. The knave is right, said he. It were to implicate your lordship. It were to give color to his silly suspicions. Let him make his search. But be so good as to summon my valet. He shall hand you my garments, that you may do your will upon them. But unless you justify yourself by finding the letter you are seeking, you shall have to reckon with the consequences of discomposing a gentleman for nothing. Now, sir, is it a bargain? Mr. Green looked him over, and if he was shaken by the calm assurance of Mr. Carroll's tone and manner, he concealed it very effectively. We'll make no bargains, said he. I have my duty to do. He signed to one of the bailiffs. Fetch the gentleman's servant, said he. So be it, said Mr. Carroll. But you take too much upon yourself, sir. Your duty, I think, would have been to arrest me and carry me to Lord Carteret. There'd be searched if his lordship considered it necessary. I have no cause to arrest you until I find it. Mr. Green snapped impatiently. Your logic is faultless. I am following my Lord Carteret orders to the letter. I am to effect no arrest until I have positive evidence. Yet you are detaining me. What does this amount to but an arrest? Mr. Green disdained to answer. Leduc entered, and Mr. Carroll turned to Lord Ostermore. There is no reason why I should detain your lordship, said he. In these operations, a lady, he waved an expressive hand, bent an expressive eye upon the Earl. Lord Ostermore seemed to waver. He was not. He had never been a man to think for others. But Hortensia cut in before he could reply. We will wait, she said. Since you are traveling to town, I am sure his lordship will be glad of your company, sir. Mr. Carroll looked deep into those great brown eyes and bowed his thanks. If it will not discompose your lordship. No, no, said Ostermore, gruff of voice and manner. We will wait. I shall be honored, sir, if you will journey with us afterwards. Mr. Carroll bowed again and went to hold the door for them, Mr. Green's eyes keenly alert for an attempt at evasion, but there was none. When his lordship and his ward had departed, Mr. Carroll turned to Rotherby, who had taken a chair, his man Gaskell behind him. He looked from the Viscount to Mr. Green. Do we require this gentleman? He asked the spy. A smile broke over Rotherby's swam face. By your leave, sir, I'll remain to see fair play. You may find me useful, Mr. Green. I have no cause to wish this marplot well, he explained. Mr. Carroll turned his back upon him, took off his coat and waistcoat. He sat down while Mr. Green spread the garments upon the table, emptied out the pockets, turned down the cuffs, ripped up the satin linings. He did it in a consummate fashion, very thoroughly. Yet, though he parted the linings from the cloth, he did so in such a manner as to leave the garments easily reparable. Mr. Carroll watched him with interest and appreciation, and what time he watched he was wondering might it not be better straightway to place the spy in possession of the letter, and thus destroy himself and Lord Ostermore at the same time, and have done with the task on which he was come to England. It seemed almost an easy way out of the affair. His betrayal of the Earl would be less ugly if he himself were to share the consequences of that betrayal. Then he checked his thoughts. What manner of mood was this? Besides, his inclination was all to become better acquainted with this odd family upon which he had stumbled in so extraordinary a manner. Down in his heart of hearts, he had a feeling that the thing he was come to do would never be done, leastways, not by him. It was in vain that he might attempt to steel himself to the task. It repelled him. It went not with a nature such as his. He thought of Everard, afire with the idea of vengeance, and to such an extent that he had succeeded in infecting Justin himself with a spark of it. He thought of him with pity almost. Pity that a man should obsess his life by such a phantasm as the same vengeance must have been to him. Was it worthwhile? Was anything worthwhile? He wondered. Lord Rotherby approached the table and took up the garments upon which Mr. Green had finished. He turned them over and supplemented Mr. Green's search. "Ye're welcome to all that ye can find," sneered Mr. Green, and turned to Mr. Carroll. "Let's have your shoes, sir." Mr. Carroll removed his shoes in silence, and Mr. Green proceeded to examine them in a manner that provoked Mr. Carroll's profound admiration. He separated the lining from the Spanish leather and probed slowly and carefully in the space between. He examined the heels very closely, going over to the window for the purpose. That done, he dropped them. "Your breeches now," said he laconically. Meanwhile, Leduc had taken up the coat, and with a needle and thread wherewith he had equipped himself, he was industriously restoring the stitches that Mr. Green had taken out. Mr. Carroll surrendered his breeches. His fine holland shirt went next, his stockings, and what other trifles he wore, until he stood as naked as Adam before the fall. Yet all in vain. His garments were restored to him, one by one, and one by one, with Leduc's aid, he resumed them. Mr. Green was looking crestfallen. "Are you satisfied?" inquired Mr. Carroll pleasantly, his good temper inexhaustible. The spy looked at him with a moody eye, plucking thoughtfully at his lip with thumb and forefinger. Then he brightened suddenly. "There's your man," said he, flashing a quick eye upon Leduc, who looked up with a quiet smile. "True," said Mr. Carroll, "and there's my portmantle above stairs, and my saddle on my horse in the stables. It is even possible, for aught you know, that there may be a hollow tooth or two in my head. Pray let your search be thorough." Mr. Green considered him again. "If you had it, it would be upon your person." "Yet consider," Mr. Carroll begged him, holding out his foot that Leduc might put on his shoe again. "I might have supposed that you would suppose that, and dispose accordingly. You had better investigate to the bitter end." Mr. Green's small eyes continued to scrutinize Leduc at intervals. The valet was a silent, serious-faced fellow. "I'll search your servant leastways," the spy announced. "By all means, Leduc, I beg that you will place yourself at this interesting gentleman's disposal." What time Mr. Carroll, unaided now, completed the resumption of his garments, Leduc, silent and expressionless, submitted to being searched. "You will observe, Leduc," said Mr. Carroll, "that we have not come to this country in vain. We are undergoing experiences that would be interesting if they were not quite so dull, amusing if they entailed less discomfort to ourselves. Assuredly, it was worthwhile to cross to England to study manners. And there are sights for you that you will never see in France. You would not, for instance, had you not come hither, have had an opportunity of observing a member of the noblesse seconding and assisting a tipstaff in the discharge of his duty, and doing it just as a hog wallows in foulness, for the love of it. The gentlemen in your country, Leduc, are too fastidious to enjoy life as it should be enjoyed. They are too prone to adhere to the amusements of their class. You have here an opportunity of perceiving how deeply they are mistaken, what relish may lie in setting one's rank on one side, and forgetting at times that by an accident, a sheer incredible accident, I assure you, Leduc, one may have been born to a gentleman's estate." Rotherby had drawn himself up, his dark face crimsoning. "D'ye talk at me, sir?" he demanded. "D'ye dare discuss me with your lackey? But why not, since you search me with my tipstaff? If you can perceive a difference, you are too subtle for me, sir." Rotherby advanced a step, then checked. He inherited mental sluggishness from his father. "You are insolent," he charged Carroll. "You insult me." "Indeed? Ha! I am working miracles." Rotherby governed his anger by an effort. "There was enough between us without this," said he. There could not be too much between us. Too much space, I mean. The Viscount looked at him furiously. I shall discuss this further with you, said he. The present is not the time nor place, but I shall know where to look for you. Le Duc, I am sure, will always be pleased to see you. He, too, is studying manners. Rotherby ignored the insult. We shall see, then, whether you can do anything more than talk. I hope that your lordship, too, is master of other accomplishments. As a talker, I do not find you very gifted, but perhaps Le Duc will be less exigent than I. Bah! His lordship flung at him, and went out, cursing him profusely, Gaskell following at his master's heels. Chapter 5. Moonshine. So, for the moment, he dismissed the subject from his mind. With Hortensia, he entered the parlor across the stone-flagged passage, to which the landlady ushered them, and turned wholeheartedly to the matter of his ward's elopement with his son. Hortensia sat in an armchair by the window, and sighed, looking out over the downs. Do I not know it? She cried, and the eyes which were averted from his lordship were charred with tears, tears of hot anger, shame, and mortification. God help all women, she added bitterly, after a moment, as many another woman under similar and worse circumstances has cried before and since. A more feeling man might have conceived that this was a moment in which to leave her to herself and her own thoughts, and in that it is possible that a more feeling man had been mistaken. Ostermore, stolid and unimaginative, but not altogether without sympathy for his ward, of whom he was reasonably fond, as fond, no doubt, as it was a capacity to be for any other than himself, approached her and set a plump hand upon the back of her chair. What was it drove you to this? His lordship frowned, and his eyes shifted uneasily from her face. In his heart, he disliked his wife excessively, disliked her because she was the one person in the world who governed him, who rode roughshod over his feelings and desires, because perhaps she was the mother of his unfeeling, detestable son. She may not have been the only person living to despise Lord Ostermore, but she was certainly the only one with the courage to manifest her contempt, and that in no circumscribed terms. And yet, disliking her as he did, returning with interest or contempt of him, he veiled it, and was loyal to his termagant, never suffering himself to utter a complaint of her to others, never suffering others to censure her within his hearing. This loyalty may have had its roots in pride. Indeed, no other soil could be assigned to them, a pride that would allow no strangers to pry into the sore places of his being. He frowned now to hear Hortensia's angry mention of her ladyship's name, and if his blue eyes moved uneasily under his beetling brows, it was because the situation irked him. How should he stand as judge between Mistress Winthrop, towards whom, as we have seen, he had a kindness, and his wife, whom he hated, yet towards whom he would not be disloyal? He wished the subject dropped, since, did he ask the obvious question, in what my Lady Ostermore could have been the cause of Hortensia's flight, he would provoke, he knew, a storm of censure from his wife. Therefore he fell silent. Hortensia, however, felt that she had said too much not to say more. Her ladyship has never failed to make me feel my position, my poverty, she pursued. There is no slight her ladyship has not put upon me, until not even your servants use me with the respect that is due to my father's daughter. And my father, she added, with a reproachful glance, was your friend, my lord. He shifted uncomfortably on his feet, deploring now the question with which he had fired the train of feminine complaint. Pish, pish, he deprecated. 'Tis fancy, child, pure fancy. So her ladyship would say, did you tax her with it? Yet your lordship knows I am not fanciful in other things. Should I then be fanciful in this? But what has her ladyship ever done, child? He demanded, thinking thus to baffle her, since he was acquainted with the subtlety of her ladyship's methods. 1,000 things, replied Hortensia hotly, and yet not one upon which I may fasten. 'Tis thus she works, by words, half-words, looks, sneers, shrugs, and sometimes foul abuse entirely disproportionate to the little cause I may unwittingly have given. Her ladyship is a little hot, the Earl admitted, but a good heart. 'Tis an excellent heart, Hortensia. For hating I, my lord. Nay, plague on't, that's womanish in you. 'Pon honor it is, womanish. What else would you have a woman? Mannish and raffish, like my Lady Ostermore. I'll not listen to you. he said. Yuri, not just Hortensia. Yuri heated. Heated. I'll not listen to you. Besides, when all is said, what reasons be these for folly ye be committed? Reasons, she echoed scornfully. Reasons and despair. Her ladyship has made my life so hard, has so shamed and crushed me, put such indignities upon me, that existence grew unbearable under your roof. It could not continue, my lord, she pursued, rising under the sway of her indignation. It could not continue. I am not of the stuff that goes to making martyrs. I am weak and, as your lordship has said, womanish. Indeed, you talk a deal, said his lordship peevishly. But she did not heed the sarcasm. Lord Rotherby, she continued, offered me the means to escape. He urged me to elope with him. His reason was that you would never consent to our marriage, but that if we took the matter into our hands, and were married first, we might depend upon your sanction afterwards, that you had too great a kindness for me to withhold your pardon. I was weak, my lord, womanish, she threw the word at him again, and it happened, God help me for a fool, that I thought I loved Lord Rotherby. And so, she sat down again, weakly, miserably, averting her face that she might hide her tears. He was touched, and he even went so far as to show something of his sympathy. He approached her again and laid a benign hand lightly upon her shoulder. But in that case, oh, the damned villain! Why this mock parson? Does your lordship not perceive? Must I die of shame? Do you not see? See? No. He was thoughtful a second, then repeated, No. I understood, she informed him, a smile, a cruelly bitter smile, lifting and steadying the corner of her lately quivering lip, when he alluded to your lordship's straitened circumstances. He has no disinheritance to fear, because he has no inheritance to look for beyond the entail, of which you cannot disinherit him. My Lord Rotherby sets a high value upon himself. He may, I do not know, he may have been in love with me, though not as I know love, which is all sacrifice, all self-denial. But by his lights he may have cared for me. He must have done, by his lights. Had I been a lady of fortune, not a doubt, but he would have made me his wife. As it was, he must aim at more profitable marriage, and meanwhile, to gratify his love for me, base as it was, he would, oh God, I cannot say it. You understand, my lord. My lord swore strenuously. There is a punishment for such a crime as this. Aye, my lord, and a way to avoid punishment for a gentleman in your son's position. Even did I flaunt my shame in some vain endeavor to have justice, a thing he knew I never could have done. My lord swore again. He shall be punished, he declared emphatically. No doubt. God will see to that, she said, a world of faith in her quivering voice. My lord's eyes expressed his doubt of divine intervention. He preferred to speak for himself. I'll disown the dog. He shall not enter my house again. You shall not be reminded of what has happened here. Gad, you were shrewd to have smoked his motive so, he cried in a burst of admiration for her insight. Gad, child, shouldst have been a lawyer. A lawyer. If it had not been for Mr. Carroll, she began, but to what else she said he lent no ear, being suddenly brought back to his fears at the mention of that gentleman's name. Mr. Carroll, save us. What is keeping him? He cried. Can they? The door opened, and Mr. Carroll walked in, ushered by the hostess. Both turned to confront him, Hortensia's eyes swollen from her weeping. Well, quoth his lordship, did they find nothing? Mr. Carroll advanced with the easy, graceful carriage that was one of his main charms, his clothes so skillfully restored by Leduc that none could guess the severity of the examination they had undergone. Since I am here and alone, your lordship may conclude such to be the case. Mr. Green is preparing for departure. He is very abject, very chapfallen. I am almost sorry for Mr. Green. I am by nature sympathetic. I have promised to make my complaint to my Lord Carteret, and so I trust there is an end to a tiresome matter. But then, sir, quoth his lordship, but then, are you the bearer of no letter? Mr. Carroll shot a swift glance over his shoulder at the door. He deliberately winked at the Earl. Did your lordship expect letters? He inquired. That was scarcely reason enough to suppose me a courier. There is some mistake. I imagine. Between the wink and the words his lordship was bewildered. Mr. Carroll turned to the lady, bowing. Then he waved a hand over the downs. "A fine view," said he airily, and she stared at him. "I shall treasure sweet memories of Maidstone." Her stare grew stonier. Did he mean the landscape or some other matter? His tone was difficult to read, a feature peculiar to his tone. "Not so shall I, sir," she made answer. "I shall never think of it other than with burning cheeks, unless it be with gratitude to your shrewdness which saved me. No more, I beg. It is a matter painful to you to dwell on. Let me exhort you to forget it. I have already done so. That is a sweet courtesy in you." "I am compounded of sweet courtesy," he informed her modestly. His lordship spoke of departure, renewing his offer to carry Mr. Carroll to town in his chaise. Meanwhile, Mr. Carroll was behaving curiously. He was tiptoeing towards the door along the wall, where he was out of line with the keyhole. He reached it suddenly and abruptly pulled it open. There was a squeal, and Mr. Green rolled forward into the room. Mr. Carroll kicked him out again before he could rise, and called Leduc to throw him outside. And that was the last they saw of Mr. Green at Maidstone. They set out soon afterwards, Mr. Carroll traveling in his lordship's chaise, and Leduc following in his master's. It was an hour or so after candlelighting time when they reached Croydon, the country lying all white under a full moon that sailed in a clear, calm sky. His lordship swore that he would go no farther that night. The traveling fatigued him. Indeed, for the last few miles of the journey he had been dozing in his corner of the carriage, conversation having long since been abandoned as too great an effort on so bad a road, which shook and jolted him beyond endurance. His lordship's chaise was of an old-fashioned pattern, and the springs far from what might have been desired or expected in a nobleman's conveyance. They alighted at the Bells. His lordship bespoke supper, invited Mr. Carroll to join them, and, what time the meal was preparing, went into a noisy doze in the parlor's best chair. Mistress Winthrop sauntered out into the garden. The calm and fragrance of the night invited her, alone with her thoughts. She paced along a while, until her solitude was disturbed by the advent of Mr. Carroll. He, too, had need to think, and he had come out into the peace of the night to indulge his need. Seeing her, he made as if to withdraw again, but she perceived him and called him to her side. He went most readily, yet where he stood before her in an attitude of courteous deference. She was at a loss what she should say to him, or rather, what words she should employ. At last, with a half-laugh of nervousness, "I am by nature very inquisitive, sir," she prefaced. "I had already judged you to be an exceptional woman," Mr. Carroll commented softly. She mused an instant. "Are you never serious?" she asked him. "Is it worthwhile?" he counter-questioned, and, whether intent or accident, he let her see something of himself. "Is it even amusing to be serious? Is there in life nothing but amusement?" "Oh, yes, but nothing so vital. I speak with knowledge. The gift of laughter has been my salvation." "From what, sir?" "Ah, who shall say that? My history and my rearing have been such that I bowed before them. I have become the most gloomy, melancholy man that steps this gloomy, melancholy world. By now I might have found existence insupportable, and so, who knows, I might have set a term to it. But I had the wisdom to prefer laughter. Humanity is a delectable spectacle if we but have the gift to observe in a dispassionate spirit. Such a gift have I cultivated. The squirming of a human worm is interesting to observe, and the practice of observing it has this advantage, that while we observe it we forget to squirm ourselves." He shrugged and smiled. "But proves my contention. That I might explain myself, you made me for a moment serious, set me squirming in my turn." She moved a little, and he fell into step beside her, a little while there was silence. Presently, "You find me, no doubt, as amusing as any other of your human worms," said she. "God forbid," he answered soberly. She laughed. "You make an exception in my case, then. That is a subtle flattery. Have I not said that I had judged you to be an exceptional woman? Exceptionally foolish, not a doubt. A clumsy compliment, devoid of wit. When we grow truthful, it may be forgiven us if we fall short of wit. That were an argument in favor of avoiding truth. Were it necessary," said he, "for truth is seldom so intrusive as to need avoiding. But we are straying. There was a score upon which you were inquisitive, you said. from which I take it that you sought knowledge at my hands. Pray seek it. I am a well of knowledge. I desire to know, nay, but I have asked you already. I desire to know, did you deem me a very pitiful little fool? They had reached the privet hedge, and turned. They paused now before resuming their walk. He paused, also before replying. Then, I should judge you wise in most things, he answered slowly, critically. But in the matter to which I owe the blessing of having served you, I do not think you wise. Do you love Lord Rotherby? What if so? After what you have learned, I should account you still less wise. You are impertinent, sir, she reproved him. Nay, most pertinent. Did you not ask me to sit in judgment upon this matter? And unless you confess to me, how am I to absolve you? I did not crave your absolution. You take too much upon yourself. So said Lord Rotherby. You seem to have something in common when all is said. She bit her lip in chagrin. They paced in silence to the lawn's end and turned again. Then, you treat me like a fool, she reproved him. How is that possible when already I think I love you? She started from him and stared at him for a long moment. You insult me, she cried angrily, conceiving that she understood his mind. Do you think that because I may have committed a folly I have forfeited all claim to be respected, that I am a subject for insolent speeches? You are illogical, said Mr. Carroll, the imperturbable. I have told you that I love you. Should I insult the woman I have said I love? You love me? She looked at him, her face very white in the white moonlight, her lips parted, a kindling anger in her eyes. Are you mad? I ain't sure. There have been moments when I have almost feared it. This is not one of them. You wish me to think you serious? She laughed the thought stridently in her indignation. I have known you just 4 hours, said she. Precisely the time I think I have loved you. You think, she echoed scornfully. Oh, you make that reservation. You are not quite sure. Can we be sure of anything? He deprecated. Of some things, she answered icily. And I am sure of one, that I am beginning to understand you. Then understand yourself for an impudent, fleering coxcomb. She flung at him and turned to leave him. That is not explanation, said Mr. Carroll thoughtfully. It is mere abuse. What else do you deserve? She asked him over her shoulder. That you should have dared, she withered him. To love you quite so suddenly, he inquired and misquoted. Whoever loved at all, that loved not at first sight? Hortensia. You have not the right to my name, sir. Yet I offer you the right to mine, he answered, with humble reproach. You shall be punished, she promised him, and in high dudgeon left him. Punished? Oh, cruel. Can you then be? But she was gone. He looked up at the moon, and took it into his confidence to reproach it. 'Twas your white face beglamoured me, he told it aloud. See how execrable a beginning I've made, and therefore how excellent. And he laughed, but entirely without mirth. He remained pacing in the moonlight, very thoughtful, and for once it seemed not at all amused. His life appeared to be tangling itself beyond unraveling, and his vaunted habit of laughter scarce served at present to show him the way out. Chapter 6. Hortensia's Return. Mr. Carroll needs explaining as he walks there in the moonlight. That is, if we are at all to understand him, a matter by no means easy, considering that he has confessed he did not understand himself. Did ever man make a sincere declaration of sudden passion as flippantly as he had done, or in terms better calculated to alienate the regard he sought to win? Did ever man choose his time with less discrimination, or his words with less discretion? Assuredly not. To suppose that Mr. Carroll was unaware of this would be to suppose him a fool, and that he most certainly was not. His mood was extremely complex. Its analysis, I fear, may baffle us. It must have seemed to you, as it certainly seemed to Mistress Winthrop, that he made a mock of her, that in truth he was the impudent, fleering coxcomb she pronounced him, and nothing more. Not so. Mock he most certainly did. But his mockery was all aimed to strike himself on the recoil, himself and the sentiments which had sprung to being in his soul, and to which, nameless as he was, pledged as he was to a task that would most likely involve his ruin, he conceived that he had no right. He gave expression to his feelings, yet chose for them the expression best calculated to render them barren of all consequence where Mistress Winthrop was concerned. Where another would have hidden those emotions, Mr. Carroll elected to flaunt them half derisively, that Hortensia might trample him underfoot in sheer disgust. It was, perhaps, the knowledge that did he wait, and come to her as an honest, devout lover. He must in honesty tell her all there was to know of his odd history and of his bastardy, and thus set up between them a barrier insurmountable. Better, he may have thought, to make from the outset a mockery of a passion for which there could be no hope. And so, under that mocking, impertinent exterior, I hope you catch some glimpse of the real, suffering man, the man who boasted that he had the gift of laughter. He continued a while to pace the dewy lawn after she had left him, and a deep despondency descended upon the spirit of this man who accounted seriousness a folly. Hitherto his rancor against his father had been a theoretical rancor, a thing educated into him by Everard, and accepted by him as we accept a proposition in Euclid that is proved to us. In its way it had been a make-believe rancor, a rancor on principle, for he had been made to see that unless he was inflamed by it, he was not worthy to be his mother's son. Tonight had changed all this. No longer was his grievance sentimental, theoretical, or abstract. It was suddenly become real and very bitter. It was no longer a question of the wrong done his mother 30 years ago. It became the question of a wrong done himself in casting him nameless upon the world, a thing of scorn to cruel, unjust humanity. Could Mistress Winthrop have guessed the bitter self-derision with which he had, in apparent levity, offered her his name, she might have felt some pity for him who had no pity for himself. And so, tonight he felt, as once for a moment Everard had made him feel, that he had a very real wrong of his own to avenge upon his father, and the task before him lost much of the repugnance that it had held for him hitherto. All this because 4 hours ago he had looked into the brown depths of Mistress Winthrop's eyes. He sighed and declaimed a line of Congreve's. Woman is a fair image in a pool, who leaps at it is sunk. The landlord came to bid him in to supper. He excused himself, sent his lordship word that he was overtired, and went off to bed. They met at breakfast. At an early hour upon the morrow, Mistress Winthrop cool and distant, his lordship grumpy and mute, Mr. Carroll airy and talkative as was his habit. They set out soon afterwards, but matters were nowise improved. His lordship dozed in a corner of the carriage, while Mistress Winthrop found more interest in the flowering hedgerows than in Mr. Carroll, ignored him when he talked, and did not answer him when he set questions, till, in the end, he too lapsed into silence, and as a solation for his soreness, assured himself by lengthy, wordless arguments that matters were best so. They entered the outlying parts of London some 2 hours later, and it still wanted an hour or so to noon when the chaise brought up inside the railings before the Earl's house in Lincoln's Inn Fields. There came a rush of footmen, a bustle of service, amid which they alighted and entered the splendid residence that was part of the little that remained Lord Ostermore from the wreck his fortunes had suffered on the shoals of the South Sea. Mr. Carroll paused a moment to dismiss Leduc to the address in Old Palace Yard, where he had hired a lodging. That done, he followed his lordship and Hortensia within doors. From the inner hall a footman ushered him across an antechamber to a room on the right, which proved to be the library, and was his lordship's habitual retreat. It was a spacious, pillared chamber, very richly paneled in damask silk, and very richly furnished, having long French windows that opened on a terrace above the garden. As they entered there came a swift rustle of petticoats at their heels, and Mr. Carroll stood aside, bowing, to give passage to a tall lady who swept by with no more regard for him than had he been one of the house's lackeys. She was, he observed, of middle age, lean and aquiline-featured, with an exaggerated chin that ended squarely as boot. Her sallow cheeks were raddled to a hectic color, a monstrous headdress, like that of some horse in a Lord Mayor's show, coiffure, and her dress was a mixture of extravagance and incongruity, the petticoat absurdly hooped. She swept into the room like a battleship into action, and let fly her first broadside at Mistress Winthrop from the threshold. "Codso," she shrilled, "you have come back. And for what have you come back? Am I to live in the same house with you, you shameless madam, that have no more thought for your reputation than a slut in a smock race?" Hortensia raised indignant eyes from out of a face that was very pale. Her lips were tightly pressed, in resolution, thought Mr. Carroll, who was very observant of her, not to answer her ladyship, for Mr. Carroll had little doubt as to the identity of this dragon. "My love, my dear," began his lordship, advancing a step, his tone a very salve. Then, seeking to create a diversion, he waved a hand towards Mr. Carroll. "Let me present. Did I speak to you?" She turned to bombard him. "Have you not done harm enough? Had you been aught but a fool, had you respected me as a husband should, you had left well alone and let her go her ways. There was my duty to her father, to say aught of—" "And what of your duty to me?" she blazed, her eyes puckering most malignantly. She reminded Mr. Carroll of nothing so much as a vulture. "Had you forgotten that? Have ye no thought for decency, no respect for your wife?" Her strident voice was echoing through the house and drawing a little crowd of gaping servants to the hall. To spare Mistress Winthrop, Mr. Carroll took it upon himself to close the door. The Countess turned at the sound. "Who is this?" she asked, measuring the elegant figure with an evil eye. And Mr. Carroll felt it in his bones that she had done him the honor to dislike him at sight. "It is a gentleman who— His lordship thought it better, apparently, not to explain the exact circumstances under which he had met the gentleman. He shifted ground. "I was about to present him, my love. It is Mr. Carroll, Mr. Justin Carroll. This, sir, is my Lady Ostermore." Mr. Carroll made her a profound bow. Her ladyship retorted with a sniff. "Is it a kinsman of yours, my lord?" And the contempt of the question was laden with a suggestion that smote Mr. Carroll hard. What she implied in wanton offensive mockery was no more than he alone present knew to be the exact and hideous truth. "Some remote kinsman, I make no doubt," the Earl explained. "Until yesterday I had not the honor of his acquaintance. Mr. Carroll is from France." "You'll be a Jacobite, no doubt, then," were her first, uncompromising words to the guest. Mr. Carroll made her another bow. "If I were, I should make no secret of it with your ladyship," he answered with that irritating suavity in which he clothed his most obvious sarcasms. Her ladyship opened her eyes a little wider. Here was a tone she wasn't used to. "And what may your business with his lordship be?" "His lordship's business, I think," answered Mr. Carroll in a tone of such exquisite politeness and deference that the words seemed purged of all their rudeness. "Will you answer me so, sir?" she demanded, nevertheless, her voice quivering. "My love," interpolated his lordship hurriedly, his florid face aflush. "We are vastly indebted to Mr. Carroll, as you shall learn. It was he who saved Hortensia." "Saved the drab, did he? And from what, pray?" "Madam," it was Hortensia who spoke. She had risen, pale with anger, and she made appeal now to her guardian. "My lord, I'll not remain to be so spoken of. Suffer me to go, that her ladyship should so speak of me to my face, and to a stranger." "Stranger?" crowed her ladyship. "Lard, and what d'ye suppose will happen? Are you so nice about a stranger hearing what I may have to say of you? You that will be the talk of the whole lewd town for this fine escapade? And what'll the town say of you?" "My love," his lordship sought again to soothe her. "Sylvia, let me implore you, a little moderation, a little charity. Hortensia has been foolish. She confesses so much herself. Yet when all is said, 'tis not she is to blame. Am I? My love," was it suggested. "I marvel it was not. Indeed, I marvel. Oh! Hortensia is not to blame. The sweet, pure dove. What is she, then?" "To be pitied, ma'am," said his lordship, stirred to sudden anger, "that she should lend an ear to your disreputable son." "My son? My son?" cried her ladyship, her voice more and more strident. Her face, flushing till the rouge upon it was put to shame, revealed in all its unnatural hideousness. "And is he not your son, my lord?" "There are moments," he answered heartily, "when I find it difficult to believe." It was much for him to say, and to her ladyship of all people. It was pure mutiny. She gasped for air, pumped her brain for words. Meantime, his lordship continued with an eloquence entirely unusual in him, and prompted entirely by his strong feelings in the matter of his son. "He is a disgrace to his name. He always has been. When a boy, he was a liar and a thief, and had he had his deserts, he had been lodged in Newgate long ago, or worse. Now that he's a man, he's an abandoned profligate, a brawler, a drunkard, a rake-hell. So much I have long known him for. But today he has shown himself for something even worse. I had thought that my ward, at least, had been sacred from his villainy. That is the last drop. I'll not condone it. Damn me, I can't condone it. I'll disown him. He shall not set foot in house of mine again. Let him keep the company of his Grace of Wharton and his other abandoned friends of the Hellfire Club. He keeps not mine. He keeps not mine, I say. Her ladyship swallowed hard. From red that she had been, she was now ashen under her rouge. And is this one in baggage to keep mine? Is she to disgrace a household that has grown too nice to contain your son? My lord, oh, my lord, give me leave to go, Hortensia entreated. I go, sneered her ladyship. Go. You had best go. Back to him. What for did ye leave him? Did ye dream there could be aught to return to? Hortensia turned to her guardian again appealingly, but her ladyship bore down upon her, incensed by this ignoring. She caught the girl's wrist in her claw-like hand. Answer me, you drab. What for did you return? What is to be done with you now that, why, are soiled goods? Where shall we find a husband for you? I do not want a husband, madam, answered Hortensia. Will ye lead apes in hell, then? Bah! 'Tis not what ye want, my fine madam. 'Tis what we can get you, and where shall we find you a husband now? Her eye fell upon Mr. Carroll, standing by one of the windows, a look of profound disgust overplaying the usually immobile face. Perhaps the gentleman from France, the gentleman who saved you, she sneered, will propose to take the office. With all my heart, ma'am, Mr. Carroll startled him in himself by answering. Then, perceiving that he had spoken too much upon impulse, given utterance to what was passing in his mind, I but mention it to show your ladyship how mistaken are your conclusions, he added. The Countess loosed her hold of Hortensia's wrist in her amazement, and looked the gentleman from France up and down in a mighty scornful manner. Codso, she swore, I may take it, then, that your saving her, as ye call it, was no accident. Indeed it was, ma'am, a most fortunate accident for your son. For my son? As how? It saved him from hanging, ma'am, Mr. Carroll informed her, and gave her something other than the baiting of Hortensia to occupy her mind. Hang, she gasped. Are you speaking of Lord Rotherby? Aye, of Lord Rotherby, and not a word more than is true. Put in the Earl. Do you know, but you do not, the extent of your precious son's villainy? At Maidstone, where I overtook them at the Adam and Eve, he had a make-believe parson, and he was luring this poor child into a mock marriage. Her ladyship stared. Mock marriage? She echoed. Marriage? La! And again she vented her unpleasant laugh. Did she insist on that, the prude? Why amaze me? Surely, my love, you do not apprehend. Had Lord Rotherby's parson not been detected and unmasked by Mr. Carroll here, would you on me believe she did not know the fellow was no parson? Oh, cried Hortensia, your ladyship has a very wicked soul. May God forgive you. And who is to forgive you? Snapped the Countess. I need no forgiveness, for I have done no wrong. A folly I confess to. I was mad to have heeded such a villain. Her ladyship gathered forces for a fresh assault, but Mr. Carroll anticipated it. It was no doubt a great impertinence in him, but he saw Hortensia's urgent need, and he felt, moreover, that not even Lord Ostermore would resent his crossing swords a moment with her ladyship. You would do well, ma'am, to remember, said he, in his singularly precise voice, that Lord Rotherby even now, and as things have fallen out, is by no means quit of all danger. She looked at this smooth gentleman, and his words burned themselves into her brain. She quivered with mingling fear and anger. Wah! What does ye mean? Quoth she, that even at this hour, if the matter were put about, his lordship might be brought to account for it, and it might fare very ill with him. The law of England deals heavily with an offense such as Lord Rotherby's, and the attempt at a mock marriage, of which there is no lack of evidence, would so aggravate the crime of abduction, if it were informed against, that it might go very hard with him. Her jaw fell. She caught more than an admonition in his words. It almost seemed to her that he was threatening. Who? Who is to inform? She asked point blank, her tone a challenge, and yet the odd change in it from its recent aggressiveness was almost ludicrous. Ah, who? Said Mr. Carroll, raising his eyes and fetching a sigh. It would appear that a messenger from the Secretary of State, on another matter, was at the Adam and Eve at the time with two of his catchpoles, and he was a witness of the whole affair. Then again, and he waved a hand doorwards, servants are servants. I make no doubt they are listening, and your ladyship's voice has scarce been controlled. You can never say when a servant may cease to be a servant and become an active enemy. Damn the servants, she swore, dismissing them from consideration. Who is this messenger of the secretary's? Who is he? He was named Green. 'Tis all I know. And where may be found, I cannot say. She turned to Lord Ostermore. Where is Rotherby? She inquired. She was a thought breathless. I do not know, said he, in a voice that signified how little he cared. He must be found. This fellow's silence must be bought. I'll not have my son disgraced and jailed. Perhaps he must be found. Her alarm was very real now. She moved toward the door, then paused, and turned again. Meantime, let your lordship consider what dispositions you are to make for this wretched girl who is the cause of all this garboil. And she swept out, slamming the door violently after her. Chapter 7. Father and son. Mr. Carroll stayed to dine at Stretton House. Although they had journeyed but from Croydon that morning, he would prefer to have gone first to his lodging to made, fastidious as he was, a suitable change in his apparel. But the urgency that his task dictated caused him to waive the point. He had a half-hour or so to himself after the stormy scene with her ladyship, in which he had played again, though in a lesser degree, the part of saviour to Mistress Winthrop, a matter for which the lady had rewarded him, ere withdrawing, with a friendly smile, which caused him to think her disposed to forgive him his yesternight's folly. In that half-hour, he gave himself again very seriously to the contemplation of his position. He had no illusions on the score of Lord Ostermore, and he rated his father no higher than he deserved. But he was just and shrewd in his judgment, and he was forced to confess that he had found his father was vastly different from the man he had been led to expect. He had looked to find a debauched old rake, a vile creature steeped in vice and wickedness. Instead, he found a weak, easy-natured, commonplace fellow, whose worst sin seemed to be the selfishness that is usually inseparable from those other characteristics. If Ostermore was not a man of the type that inspires strong affection, neither was he of the type that provokes strong dislike. His colorless nature left one indifferent to him. Mr. Carroll, somewhat to his dismay, found himself inclined to extend the man some sympathy, caught himself upon the verge of pitying him for being burdened with so very unfilial a son and so very cursed a wife. It was one of his cherished beliefs of the evil that men do as a trick of finding them out in this life, and here he believed, as shrew-ridden husband and despised father, the Earl of Ostermore was being made to expiate that sin of his early years. Another of Mr. Carroll's philosophies was that, when all is said, man is little of a free agent. His viciousness or sanctity is temperamental, and not the man but his nature, which is not self-imbued, must bear the responsibility of a man's deeds, be they good or bad. In the abstract, such beliefs are well enough. They are excellent standards by which to judge where other sufferers and ourselves are concerned. But when we ourselves are touched, they are discounted by the measure in which a man's deeds or misdeeds may affect us. And although to an extent this might be the case now with Mr. Carroll, yet in spite of it, he found himself excusing his father on the score of the man's weakness and stupidity, until he caught himself up with the reflection that this was a disloyalty to Everard, to his training, and to his mother. And yet he reverted. In such a man as Ostermore, sheer stupidity, a lack of imagination, of insight into things as they really are, a lack of feeling that would disable him from appreciating the extent of any wrong he did, seemed to Mr. Carroll to be extenuating circumstances. He conceived that he was amazingly dispassionate in his judgment, and he wondered was he right or wrong so to be. Then the thought of his task arose in his mind, and it bathed him in a sweat of horror. Over in France he had allowed himself to be persuaded, and had pledged himself to do this thing. Everard, the relentless, unforgiving fanatic of vengeance, had, as we have seen, trained him to believe that the avenging of his mother's wrongs was the only thing that could justify his own existence. Besides, it had all seemed remote then, and easy as remote things are apt seem. But now that he had met in the flesh this man who was his father, his hesitation was turned to very horror. It was not that he did not conceive, in spite of his odd ideas upon temperament and its responsibilities, that his mother's wrongs cried out for vengeance, and that the avenging of them would be a righteous, fitting deed. But it was that he conceived that his own was not the hand to do the work of the executioner upon one who, after all, was still his own father. It was hideously unnatural. He sat in the library, awaiting his lordship and the announcement of dinner. There was a book before him, but his eyes were upon the window, the smooth lawns beyond, all drenched in summer sunshine, and his thoughts were introspective. He looked into his shuddering soul and saw that he would not do the thing which he was come to do. He would await the coming of Everard, to tell him so. There would be a storm to face, he knew, but sooner that than carry this vile thing through. It was vile, most damnably vile, he now opined. The decision taken, he rose and crossed the window. His mind had been in travail. His soul had known the pangs of labor. But now that this strong resolve had been brought forth, an ease and peace were his that seemed to prove to him how right he was. How wrong must aught else have been? Lord Ostermore came in. He announced that they would be dining alone together. Her ladyship, he explained, has gone forth in person to seek Lord Rotherby. She believes that she knows where to find him. In some disreputable haunt, no doubt, whither her ladyship would have been better advised to have sent a servant. But women are wayward cattle, wayward, headstrong cattle. Have you not found them so, Mr. Carroll? I have found that the opinion is common to most husbands, said Mr. Carroll, then added a question touching Mistress Winthrop, and wondered would she not be joining them at table. The poor child keeps her chamber, said the Earl. She is overwrought. I am afraid her ladyship, he broke off abruptly and coughed. She is overwrought, he repeated in conclusion, so that we dine alone. And alone they dined. Ostermore, despite the havoc suffered by his fortunes, kept an excellent table and a clever cook, and Mr. Carroll was glad to discover in his sire this one commendable trait. The conversation was desultory throughout the repast, but when the cloth was raised and the table cleared of all but the dishes of fruit and the decanters of Oporto, Canary, and Madeira, there came a moment of expansion. Mr. Carroll was leaning back in his chair, fingering the stem of his wine glass, watching the play of sunlight through the ruddy amber of the wine, and considering the extraordinarily odd position of a man sitting at table by the merest chance, almost with a father who was not aware that he had begotten him. A question from his lordship came to stir him partially from a reverie into which he was beginning to lapse. Do you look to make a long sojourn in England, Mr. Carroll? It will depend, was a vague and half unconscious answer, upon the success of the matter I am come to transact. There ensued a brief pause, during which Mr. Carroll fell again into his abstraction. Where do you dwell when in France, sir? Inquired my lord, as if to make polite conversation. Mr. Carroll, lulled by his musings into carelessness, answered truthfully, at Maligny, in Normandy. The next moment there was a tinkle of breaking glass, and Mr. Carroll realized his indiscretion and turned cold. Lord Ostermore, who had been in the act of raising his glass, fetched it down again so suddenly that the stem broke in his fingers, and the mahogany was flooded with the liquor. A servant hastened forward and set a fresh glass for his lordship. That done, Ostermore signed a man to withdraw. The fellow went, closing the door and leaving those two alone. The pause had been sufficient to enable Mr. Carroll to recover, and for all that his pulses throbbed more quickly than their habit. Outwardly he maintained his lazily indifferent pose, as if entirely unconscious that what he had said had occasioned his father the least disturbance. You dwelt at Maligny, said his lordship, the usual high color all vanished from his face. And again, you dwelt at Maligny, and your name is Carroll. Mr. Carroll looked up quickly, as if suddenly aware that his lordship was expressing surprise. Why, yes, said he. What is there odd in that? How does it happen that you come to live there? Are you at all connected with the family of Maligny? On your mother's side, perhaps? Mr. Carroll took up his wine-glass. I take it, said he easily, that there was some such family at some time, but it is clear it must have fallen upon evil days. He sipped at his wine. There are none left now, he explained, as he set down his glass. The last of them died, I believe, in England. His eyes turned full upon the Earl, but their glance seemed entirely idle. It was in consequence of that my father was enabled to purchase the estate. Mr. Carroll accounted it no lie that he suppressed the fact that the father to whom he referred was but his father by adoption. Relief spread instantly upon Lord Ostermore's countenance. Clearly, he saw, Here was pure coincidence, and nothing more. Indeed, what else should there have been? What was it that he had feared? He did not know. Still he accounted it an odd matter, and said so. "What is odd?" inquired Mr. Carroll. "Does it happen that your lordship was acquainted at any time with that vanished family?" "I was, sir, slightly acquainted, at one time with one or two of its members. 'Tis that is odd. You see, sir, my name, too, happens to be Carroll." "True, yet I see nothing so oddly coincident in the matter, particularly if your acquaintance with these Malignes was but slight." "Indeed, you are right. You are right. There's no such great coincidence when all is said. The name reminded me of a folly of my youth. 'Twas that made impression." "A folly?" quoth Mr. Carroll, his eyebrows raised. "Aye, a folly that went near undoing me, for had it come to my father's ears, he had broke me without mercy. He was a hard man, my father, a Puritan in his ideas." "A greater than your lordship?" inquired Mr. Carroll blandly, masking the rage that seethed in him. His lordship laughed. "You're a wag, Mr. Carroll, a damned wag." Then reverting to the matter that was uppermost in his mind. "'Tis a fact, though, 'pon honor, my father would ha' broke me. Luckily she died." "Who died?" asked Mr. Carroll, with a show of interest. "The girl. Did I not tell you there was a girl? She was a folly, Antoinette de Maligny. But she died, most opportunely, egad. 'Twas a very damned mercy that she did. It cut the what d'ye call it, not?" "The Gordian knot," suggested Mr. Carroll. "Aye, the Gordian knot. Had she lived and had my father smoked the affair, gad, he would ha' broke me. He would so," he repeated, and emptied his glass. Mr. Carroll, white to the lips, sat very still a moment. Then he did a curious thing. Did it with a curious suddenness. He took a knife from the table and hacked off the lowest button from his coat. This he pushed across the board to his father. "To turn to other matters," said he, "there's the letter you were expecting from abroad." "Eh? What?" Lord Ostermore took up the button. It was of silk, interwoven with gold thread. He turned it over in his fingers, looking at it with a heavy eye, and then at his guest. "Eh? Letter?" he muttered, puzzled. "If your lordship will cut that open, you will see what his majesty has to propose." He mentioned the king in a voice charged with suggestion, so that no doubt could linger on the score of the king he meant. "Gad!" cried his lordship. "Gad! 'Twas thus ye bubble, Mr. Green? Shrewd, on my soul. And you are the messenger, then?" "I am the messenger," answered Mr. Carroll coldly. "And why did you not say so before?" For the fraction of a second, Mr. Carroll hesitated. Then, "Because I did not judge that the time was come," said he. Chapter 8. Temptation. His lordship ripped away the silk covering of the button with a penknife, and disemboweled it of a small packet, which consisted of a sheet of fine and very closely folded and tightly compressed paper. This he spread, cast an eye over, and then looked up at a companion, who was watching him with simulated indolence. His lordship had paled a little, and there was about the lines of his mouth a look of preternatural gravity. He looked furtively towards the door, his heavy eyebrows lowering. "I think," he said, "that we shall be more snug in the library. Will you bear me company, Mr. Carroll?" Mr. Carroll rose instantly. The Earl folded the letter and turned to go. His companion paused to pick up the fragments of the button and slipped them into his pocket. He performed the office with a smile on his lips that was half pity, half contempt. It did not seem to him that there would be the least need to betray Lord Ostermore once his lordship was wedded to the Stuart faction. He would not fail to betray himself through some act of thoughtless stupidity, such as this. In the library, the door and that of the anteroom beyond it carefully closed, his lordship unlocked a secretaire walnut, very handsomely inlaid, and, drawing up a chair, he sat down to perusal the king's letter. When he had read it through, he remained lost in thought a while. At length he looked up and across towards Mr. Carroll, who was standing by one of the windows. "You are no doubt a confidential agent, sir," said he, "and you will be fully aware of the contents of this letter that you have brought me." "Fully, my lord," answered Mr. Carroll, "and I venture to hope that His Majesty's promises will overcome any hesitation that you may feel." "His Majesty's promises?" said my lord thoughtfully. "His Majesty may never have a chance of fulfilling them. Very true, sir. But who gambles must set a stake upon the board. Your lordship has been something of a gamester already, or so I gather, with little profit. Here's a chance to play another game that may mend the evil fortunes of the last. The Earl scanned him in surprise. You are excellent well informed, said he, between surprise and irony. My trade demands it. Knowledge is my buckler. His lordship nodded slowly and fell very thoughtful, the letter before him, his eyes wandering ever and anon to con again some portion of it. It is a game in which I stake my head, he muttered presently. Has your lordship anything else to stake? Inquired Mr. Carroll. The Earl looked at him again with a gloomy eye and sighed, but said nothing. Mr. Carroll resumed. It is for your lordship to declare, he said quite coolly, whether His Majesty has covered your stake. If you think not, it is even possible that he may be induced to improve his offer. Though if you think not, for my own part one consider that you set too high a value on that same head of yours. Touched in his vanity, Ostermore looked up at him with a sudden frown. You take a bold tone, sir, said he, a very bold tone. Boldness is the attribute next to knowledge most essential to my calling, Mr. Carroll reminded him. His lordship's I fell before the other's cold glance, and again he lapsed into thoughtfulness, his cheek now upon his hand. Suddenly he looked up again. Tell me, said he, who else is in this thing? Men say that Atterbury is not above suspicion. Is it? Mr. Carroll bent forward to tap the king's letter with a rigid forefinger. When your lordship tells me that you are ready to concert upon embarking your fortunes in this bottom, you shall find me disposed, perhaps, to answer questions concerning others. Meanwhile, our concern is with yourself. Dons and the devil, swore his lordship angrily. Is this a way to speak to me? He scowled at the agent. Tell me, my fine fellow, what would happen if I were to lay this letter you have brought me before the nearest justice? I cannot say for sure, answered Mr. Carroll quietly, but it is very probable it would help your lordship to the gallows. For if you will give yourself the trouble of reading it again and more carefully, you will see that it makes acknowledgment of the offer of services you wrote His Majesty a month or so ago. His lordship's eyes dropped to the letter again. He caught his breath in sudden fear. Were I your lordship, I should leave the nearest justice to enjoy his dinner in peace, said Mr. Carroll, smiling. His lordship laughed in a sickly manner. He felt foolish, a rare condition in him, as in most fools. Well, well, said he gruffly, the matter needs reflection. It needs reflection. Behind them the door opened noiselessly, and her ladyship appeared in cloak and wimple. She paused there, unperceived by either, arrested by the words she had caught, and waiting in the hope of hearing more. I must sleep on, at least, his lordship was continuing. 'Tis too grave a matter to be determined thus in haste. A faint sound caught the keen ears of Mr. Carroll. He turned with a leisureliness that bore witness to his miraculous self-control. Perceiving the countess, he bowed and casually put his lordship on his guard. Ah, said he, here is her ladyship returned. Lord Ostermore gasped audibly and swung round in an alarm than which nothing could have betrayed him more effectively. My love, he cried, stammering, and by his wild haste concealed the letter that he held, drew her attention to it. Mr. Carroll stepped between them, his back to his lordship, that he might act as a screen under cover which to dispose safely of that dangerous document. But he was too late. Her ladyship's quick eyes had flashed to it, and if the distance precluded the possibility of her discovering anything that might be written upon it, she, nevertheless, could see the curious nature of the paper, which was of the flimsiest tissue of a sort extremely uncommon. What is ye hide? Said she, as she came forward. Why, we are very close. Surely, what mischief is ye hatch, my lord? Mischief, my love? He smiled propitiatingly, hating her more than ever in that moment. He had stuffed the letter into an inner pocket of his coat, and but that she had another matter to concern her at the moment, she would not have allowed the question she had asked to be so put aside. But this other matter upon her mind touched her very closely. Devil take it, whatever it may be, Rotherby is here. Rotherby, his demeanor changed. From conciliating it was a sudden transformed to indignant. What makes he here? He demanded. Did I not forbid in my house? I brought him, she answered pregnantly. But for once he was not be put down. Then you may take him hence again, said he. I'll not have him under my roof, under the same roof with that poor child he used so infamously. I'll not suffer it. The Gorgon cannot look more coldly wicked than her ladyship just then. Have a care, my lord, she muttered threateningly. Oh, have a care, I do beseech you. I am not so to be crossed. Nor am I, ma'am, he rejoined, and then, before more could be said, Mr. Carroll stepped forward to remind them of his presence, which they seemed to stand in danger of forgetting. I fear that I intrude, my lord, said he, and bowed in leave-taking. I shall wait upon your lordship later. Your most devoted, ma'am, your very humble servant. And he bowed himself out. In the anteroom he came upon Lord Rotherby, striding to and fro, his brow all furrowed with care. At sight of Mr. Carroll, the Viscount's scowl grew blacker. Oons and the devil, he cried. What make you here? That, said Mr. Carroll pleasantly, is the very question your father is asking her ladyship concerning yourself. Your servant, sir, an airy, graceful, smiling that damnable close smile of his. He was gone, leaving Rotherby very hot and angry. Outside, Mr. Carroll hailed a chair and had himself carried to his lodging in Old Palace Yard, where Leduc awaited him. As his bearer swung briskly along, Mr. Carroll sat back and gave himself up to thought. Lord Ostermore interested him vastly. For a moment that day the Earl had aroused his anger, as you may have judged from the sudden resolve upon which he had acted when he delivered him that letter, thus embarking at the 11th hour upon a task which he had already determined to abandon. He knew not now whether to rejoice or deplore that he had acted upon that angry impulse. He knew not, indeed, whether to pity or despise this man who was swayed by no such high motives as must have affected most of those who were faithful to the exiled James. Those motives of chivalry and romanticism in most cases, Lord Ostermore would have despised if he could have understood them. For he was a man of the type that despises all things that are not essentially practical, whose results are not immediately obvious. Being all but ruined by his association with the South Sea Company, he was willing for the sake of profit to turn traitor to the king de facto, even as 30 years ago, actuated by similar motives, he had turned traitor to the king de jure. What was one to make of such a man? Wondered Mr. Carroll. If he were equipped with wit enough to apprehend the baseness of his conduct, he would be easily understood, and it would be easy to despise him. But Mr. Carroll perceived that he was dealing with one who never probed into the deeps of anything, himself and his own conduct least of all, and had a deplorable lack of perception, of understanding almost, deprived his lordship of the power to feel as most men feel, to judge as most men judge. And hence was it that Mr. Carroll thought him a subject for pity rather than contempt. Even in that other 30-year-old matter that so closely touched Mr. Carroll, the latter was sure that the same pitiful shortcomings might be urged in the man's excuse. Meanwhile, behind him at Stretton House, Mr. Carroll had left a scene of strife between Lady Ostermore and her son on one side and Lord Ostermore on the other. Weak and vacillating as he was in most things, it seemed that the Earl could be strong in his dislike of his son, and firm in his determination not to condone the infamy of his behavior toward Hortensia Winthrop. The fault is yours. Rotherby sought to excuse himself again, employing the old argument, and in an angry, contemptuous tone that was entirely unfilial. I'd ha' married the girl in earnest, but for your threats to disinherit me. You fool, his father stormed at him. Did you suppose that if I should disinherit you from marrying her, I should be likely to do less for your luring her into a mock marriage? I've done with you. Go your ways for a damned profligate, a scandal to the very name of gentleman. I've done with you. And to that the Earl adhered in spite of all that Rotherby and his mother could urge. He stamped out of the library with a final command to his son to quit his house and never disgrace it again by his presence. Rotherby looked ruefully at his mother. He means it, said he. He never loved me. He was never a father to me. Were you ever greatly a son to him? Asked her ladyship. As much as he would on me be, he answered, his black face very sullen. Oh, Steph, I am damnably used by him. He paced the chamber, storming. All this garboil about nothing, he complained. Was he never young himself? And when all is said, there's no harm done. The girl's been fetched home again. Pshaw, you're a fool, Rotherby, a fool, and there's an end on't, said his mother. I sometimes wonder which is a greater fool, you or your father, and yet he can marvel that you are a son. What do you think would have happened if you had had your way with that bread and butter miss? It had been matter enough to hang you. Pooh, said the Viscount, dropping into a chair and staring sullenly at the carpet. Then sullenly he added, his lordship would have been glad on't, so someone would have been pleased. As it is, ye'd better find a man Green who was at Maidstone and stop his mouth with guineas. He is aware of what passed. Bah, Green was there on other business, and he told her of the suspicions the messenger entertained against Mr. Carroll. It set her ladyship thinking. Why, she said presently, 'twill be that. 'Twill be what, ma'am? Asked Rotherby, looking up. Why, this fellow Carroll must ha bubbled the messenger in spite of the search he may have made. I found the popinjay here with your father, the pair as thick as thieves, and your father with a paper in his hand as fine as a cobweb. 'Sdeath, I'll be sworn he's a damned Jacobite. Rotherby was on his feet in an instant. He remembered suddenly all that he had overheard at Maidstone. Oh ho, he crowed. What cause have ye to think that? Cause? Why, what I have seen. Besides, I feel in my bones. My every instinct tells me 'tis so. If you should prove right, death, I'd find a way to sell the score of that pert fellow from France, and to dictate terms to his lordship at the same time. Her ladyship stared at him. Ye an unnatural hound, Rotherby. Would you betray your own father? Betray him? No, but I'll set a term to his plotting. Egad, has he not lost enough in the South Sea bubble, without sinking the little that is left in some wild goose Jacobite plot? How shall it matter to you, since he's sworn to disinherit you? How, madam? Rotherby laughed cunningly. I'll prevent the one and the other, and pay off Mr. Carroll at the same time. 3 birds with 1 stone, let me perish. He reached for his hat. I must find this fellow Green. What will you do? She asked, a slight anxiety trembling in her voice. Stir up his suspicions of Carroll. He'll be ready enough to act after his discomfiture at Maidstone. I'll warrant he's smarting under it. If once we can find cause to lay Carroll by the heels, the fear of the consequences should bring his lordship to his senses. 'Twill be my turn then. But you'll do nothing that will hurt your father? She enjoined him, her hand upon his shoulder. Trust me, he laughed, and added cynically, it would hardly sort with my interest to involve him. It will serve me best to frighten him into reason and a sense of his paternal duty.